What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. I am Eric Lindquist, and this is the Deeper Dive. I just said Deeper Dive twice, presented by Jock Market. I'm just excited to be here with one Adam Scherer. Again, we crushed it last week. I know that you were back in the streets with Laffy this morning. How's everything going for you?
Going pretty well. Excited to be back. It felt weird, not talking about baseball yesterday after doing it like 6 days in a row following vacation. So excited to be back.
Yeah, no, you've hit the ground running. It's good to have you back. And again, I'm excited. So we have the Deeper Dive, and then right after us, live before lock, we've got Josh and Laffy playing together, as opposed to the NBA streets where they've been at constantly doing the live before lock. Very, very excited for that. So you're going to want to stick around, but we've got a lot to get to. We've got 9 games. We've got 1 hour. We're going to just get right to it. But as you're coming in here, get that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know when this and all the other content at Awesemo is going live. Again, we're presented by Jock Market. Excited to talk about them a little bit later, but you ready to get going, my dude?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's party. Atlanta, 5.3 implied runs. Pittsburgh, 3.8 here. They're kind of getting our day going. On one side of the hill, we got Max Fried, who I think is somebody that we can at least talk about a little bit. Definitely got enough stuff here to be relevant on this slate. 12.2% chance of being a top 2 pitcher over on DraftKings today, being about appropriately owned, but he's definitely kind of the talking point to start off with. 32% hard hit percentage is fantastic. There is not much ammunition in these Pittsburgh bats. What are you doing with Max Fried today?
Yeah, it's kind of just like, it's kind of a weird price point for him on DraftKings at 8,500. It's probably a little bit more expensive than he should be based on his strikeout numbers. He has a pretty big gap between his strikeout percentage against lefties and righties, about 30+% against lefties, 30.9%, but only 21.2% against righties. And you're getting this Pittsburgh lineup that only has 2 left-handed bats plus the pitcher in it. So not the best spot for strikeouts for Fried, but at the same time, it's not a very good Pittsburgh lineup. They only have a 3.9 implied run total. You mentioned Fried's hard hit numbers this year. He's someone that throughout his career has done a pretty good job of limiting damage. Normally, I don't love rostering pitchers with the mindset of, they limit damage and, hopefully can give me like 6 innings. But there's not a ton of really good pitching on this slate, especially in the mid-range. So I do think there's some use for Fried, especially if you're playing a lot of tournament lineups. But I do think he's also a little bit overpriced for his likely strikeouts.
And Chase DeYoung, nearly a 500 X slugging, not ideal, 20.3% K percentage. The nicest thing you can say about a guy like him today is that he's cheap. He is 5,600. He's down there on the bottom end. We're not going to be touching a guy like Logan Allen, I don't think. But Chase DeYoung, at least 5,600. Maybe the price tag makes him somewhat relevant. 5% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. I don't really see how I'm going to get there. I think it's going to be a spot where we're both going to be interested in this top portion of the Atlanta Braves lineup. But any desire whatsoever in like a 150 and the $6 on DraftKings, a fantastic offering that they have over there today. Would you have a share or two of him just because of the price point?
I don't want to. I'm hoping I don't. But to what you're saying, like sometimes I just end up on these cheap guys because it opens up stuff. And you mentioned Logan Allen. He's no longer even on the slate because somehow that game just got canceled. So there's no Cleveland Tampa Bay game because of inclement weather in the dome. I guess it must be. Is it like hurricaning in Florida or something?
Oh, good. I'm going to Miami this weekend, so that's fantastic. Looking forward to that.
I just I'm guessing that's what it is, or there's a roof leak. I don't know, but whatever. That takes one of the really cheap pitchers off the slate. So to what you were saying, I don't want Chase DeYoung. Would I be shocked if I get him in a few lineups just because I know what my lineups tend to look like in tournaments? I wouldn't be shocked. But I think it's a very good spot for Atlanta. We don't have a huge sample size on DeYoung, but he has struggled with power, particularly from the right side. 333 ISO allowed to righties, 376 expected ISO. In the Braves lineup, you have Freeman from the left side, who obviously is great, but Acuna, Riley, Swanson, all with power from the right side, particularly Acuna at the top, of course. So I think it sets up as a pretty good spot for Atlanta. The ballpark's not great, but it is pretty warm, so that should help mitigate some of that as well.
So just going to the bats here, because again, this is the priority. Acuna, Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies. We got the usual suspects here on the top end. I try not to go too nuts with Heredia and such, but that's kind of the way everybody wants to be stacking up Atlanta. Looking at them right now, about appropriately owned. I think that makes some sense. We're going to see some very concentrated ownership on the top end here with that Wrigley Field game, but Atlanta specifically, you're going to be getting to a little bit of them, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I think so. Their ownership looks like maybe it's going to come in a little bit higher than we would like. Right now, 9.2 top stack percentage, 11% aggregate ownership. But at the same time, I just think there's a lot of upside here. You're talking about a pitcher that struggles with right-handed power and power in general. When you go through this lineup, for the season against right-handed pitching. 337 expected ISO for Acuna, Freeman at 283, Albies at 202, Riley at 241, Swanson at 172. For context, for anyone not familiar, anything over like 180 is pretty good. Once you start getting to 220 and higher, it's excellent. So very, very powerful lineup against a pitcher that struggles with power.
Yeah, and for everybody getting in here from the NBA streets, again, we're going to try to make this as easy as possible. We want to make it a welcoming spot to be. Everybody be chill in the chat. It seems like we got the usual suspects here from the NBA crew. Nice to see everybody jumping on over here, coming in from NBA. It's a different sport. It's a sport where we're embracing a lot of the variance. We're trying to spike upside in our bats. We're stacking batters together, 5 batters on DraftKings, 4 on FanDuel, trying to maximize upside. So in the event that a team goes for 10 runs or 11 runs, or gets some kind of a positive event, like a starter gets knocked up early or is giving up hard contact, you have an opportunity to go completely nuts here. But I guess they said that tomorrow's game is the one that's going to be postponed. So that's good to know.
It helps to know what day of the week it is. Also not really sure why, but also in my defense, not really sure why sites that people use for news decide to push that, 2 hours before lock, but whatever.
Yeah, it's always nice to know when Giannis is going to be out on Wednesday or whatever it is. Like, yeah, it's great.
Yeah. But tomorrow's game is canceled. So we do still have Logan Allen if anyone cares.
Oh, nobody does. Absolutely not a human being. But Pittsburgh Pirates, it's just such a gross spot. I mean, Adam Frazier, for being as good as he's been, only a 27.8% hard hit percentage on the season. Brian Hayes is normally the guy that I would be kind of looking to in this spot against a lefty. Feel pretty good about him, but Max Fried, just not the most exciting guy to be targeting here in this spot. What are you doing with Pittsburgh?
Yeah, not too excited to get to Pittsburgh here. One of the lowest top stack percentages on the slate. Max Fried not getting a ton of ownership, getting like 13% ownership at pitcher, which, it's not nothing, but there's a few pitchers on the slate that I think you can kind of play the leverage game with that are a little bit higher if you're playing these large field tournaments. Not really sure I'm going to single out Pittsburgh to go after Max Fried. Just kind of a spot that I don't really love for the Pirates.
That was fun. That was a quick first game. I like that. Milwaukee, 4 runs. New York Mets, 3.5 implied total for their side as well. Looking at the Milwaukee side, I mean, you got the pitcher we have to talk about the absolute most here on this slate. Brandon Woodruff is so good. 31.1% K percentage on the season, 306 expected slugging, 33.1% hard contact. He's limiting damage. He's just he's constantly going deeper into games. There's really nothing you can say other than the ownership's going to be there, but substantially the highest chance of being a top 2 pitcher on the slate over on DraftKings. Same kind of issue over on FanDuel, although you do have 85% of the field that you have at your disposal if you choose not to be going all the way up to 11.4 for him on FanDuel. But I still think in cash, I mean, I would find a way to get there, because is there a more certain pitcher on the board today than Brandon Woodruff?
I don't think so. I mean, you look at the top 2 pitcher percentage. Like you said, Woodruff clearly leads the way, followed by Musgrove, followed by just a group of guys that we'll talk about more, but nothing that's a sure thing. And even Musgrove, who like the Nats do have a sub 3 implied run total. I think Musgrove looks really good. There are some small red flags on Musgrove recently that we'll talk about later. So like when you're just talking in terms of, obviously it's baseball, everyone struggles from time to time, but when you're talking in terms of just confidence level, I don't think there's anyone that really rivals Brandon Woodruff.
And Taylor Megill, our boy, on the other side of this one as well. I know that we rostered him the other day, mainly because we see that K percentage, 30%, limited sample size. Had only been pitching in Double-A. He had a quick stint there, going across everything on Fangraphs. I mean, he looks like he has the kind of strikeout stuff that you would want in a Major League Baseball pitcher. Just going to be a question of whether or not this is an actual thing. As people become more familiar with this pitch mix, is he going to constantly be around 30%? I don't think so. But so far, other than the 45.8% hit percentage, looks like pretty good results across the board. I guess a 10% walk rate as well might be a little concerning, but I'm willing to take shots here against a Milwaukee team that I just don't really like that much, that I like targeting here and there, because you do see some Ks. What are you going to be doing with him today?
I'm interested in both sides here, because I think that Megill does still have strikeout upside here for his salary. We saw that, like, he's only made 10 starts total in his career 11 at Double-A or higher. He's only made 5 at Triple-A or in the majors. He's put up very, very good strikeout numbers at every level, but he's also still an unknown commodity for that reason. You can't go back and say, oh yeah, for 2 years at Triple-A, he's just dominated. And he's not a from what I can tell, at least, he's not a super highly regarded prospect. Fangraphs has him as the Mets number 23 prospect, not ranked overall. So, like, a lot of times, like, if you were coming up and putting up these numbers and he had the pedigree of someone like, Dylan Cease when he came up, you would just say, like, yeah, okay, that's what this dude is. He's going to do this probably. Now I just think there's a lot of uncertainty. Could he be someone that this time next year you're looking and he's like a really highly regarded guy? Sure. But could he also be someone that by this time next year he's regressed and he's like a number 5 starter or he's in the bullpen? The answer to that is also yes, I think. So I think right now with him getting like 25% ownership on DraftKings at a price tag that has jumped significantly from his last time out, I understand why he's getting the ownership. It's because of the strikeout upside. It's because there's not really any sure things at SP2 today. So I get that, but also you can take out 25% of the field just by stacking against a pitcher that we really don't know anything about in terms of, his future outlook. So I don't love the Milwaukee pricing. I don't really like the offense that much, but I do think, only 1% aggregate ownership going to Milwaukee, a 3.2% chance of being the top stack, and the fact that if they do have a good game, you're knocking about 25% of the field out, makes them interesting in these large field tournaments.
25.4% K percentage for Milwaukee on the season against righties as well. Definitely a spot where we're going to be targeting him. I got to say, he was kind of the surprise when you wake up in the morning and you refresh everything and you take a look at Tyler Megill. I mean, he was on the bottom end last start, and we were still kind of interested just because we saw one outing where there was some K potential. I mean, for him to be the 4th most likely pitcher to finish as a top 2 pitcher on DraftKings right now at 7,200, I mean, it's just a guy you've got to have interest in because of the kind of upside that exists there. And as you said, Milwaukee, I got to say they're a little bit more formidable against lefties. I mean, we know Yelich is on the left side of the plate, but he's a good hitter in any circumstance. Against lefties, 27.2% K percentage, just a little bit suppressed up against righties for the season, but only a 156 ISO in this spot, kind of middle of the pack there, 16th in MLB. I definitely think that there are some Milwaukee bats we're going to get to, but who are they?
Yeah, there's not really any one individually, I don't think, because the way I view this is I don't see any one guy that just like sets up where, sometimes you have a pitcher that you like, but you're just like this one batter's in a really good spot. I don't really see that from Milwaukee here. Only a 4 implied run total. Even Christian Yelich's power has been down for a while now. So I don't really view it as like looking to grab one guy necessarily from Milwaukee. I'm thinking more in terms of like full stacks, just because we haven't seen yet. There's no real reason. I think it's very likely Tyler Megill, at the very least, is not a good enough pitcher that he's just going to go out there and dominate every single time he pitches. He's going to have some starts where he probably just gets blown up. So I think my approach in spots like this is normally to just kind of get the full stack when I go there and say, if this guy's bad, he's going to be bad for all the hitters, because I don't think there's any one individual hitter that looks great.
On the other side of this one as well, the Mets, they ended up kind of showing up against the Yankees there in some spots. Dominic Smith, his bat's starting to come alive, but why would we be going after Brandon Woodruff whatsoever today?
Yeah, I have a really hard time getting there. Like, the argument, if you wanted to make it, would be that half the field is going to roster Brandon Woodruff, but the Mets are still just in such a tough spot. There's still 17 other offenses. They have the second lowest top stack percentage on the slate at 1.2%. If you're going there, you're going to the top 6. You do have this is the most formidable Mets lineup we've had in a while, because you have Brandon Nimmo back. You also have Jeff McNeil in the lineup, and then you have Lindor, Smith, Alonso, and Conforto rounding out the top 6. So it is actually a pretty good Mets lineup. But again, unless you're just like in the $6 on DraftKings with 58,000 people to first, if you want to run some stacks against the highest owned pitcher on the slate, I'm not going to say not to, but you have to realize that not only does Brandon Woodruff strike out a ton of guys, he doesn't give up a lot of power. He's not one of these like aces where it's like, yeah, if he's not on, he'll give up 3 home runs. He typically doesn't. So it's a very low probability play.
I would also say 80 degrees, wind blowing out 12 miles an hour to center. Not a bad hitting environment whatsoever. I mean, we have some really good hitting environments. I didn't even touch about Atlanta and Pittsburgh, 85 degrees, 70% humidity. There's just a number of spots on this slate where we're going to kind of be looking at some of the game environments, and they're just going to stick out like a sore thumb. I think the Rangers game as well, if they have that roof continuing to be open, it's 87 closed, degrees. It's closed? Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm looking at it right now, and I saw that it was open. But
I saw an alert earlier that it's closed. I don't know.
Okay.
It could have said Tuesday. It could have.
Yeah, there's that one guy for the Texas Rangers. I know I follow him on Twitter. I just can't remember what his name is. He's the guy who just says whether or not the roof is open or not every single time. EMAC brought him up on a show one time. Shout out to EMAC. Thank you, my dude, for looking out. But do you see that it is closed?
Yeah, I'm going back to double check that I actually saw that, but I know I got a pop up earlier about it.
All right. Well, while you figure that out, let me talk a little bit about Awesemo Plus tools and content. because they are the best in the industry. And you want to be on this side of the team because a weekly pass is just $29.95 right now. It includes full access to all of the premium content and tools that we have here at Awesemo.com. We have new tools that are popping up all the time. It's not just the top stacks tool. It's not just the top pitchers tool, but we have the MLB player props tool, which I love talking about. It's just such an amazing opportunity to be targeting some of these amazing K props that have been very profitable as the spin rates have dropped, as the numbers have dropped. But right now, if you're a new member, 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum just by using the promo code MLB Deeper Dive, all caps, one word, MLB Deeper Dive. That's 25% off. And if you just want MLB DFS, if you don't want to be checking out the UFC or the NBA offerings we have for the finals, which I still recommend doing, but $15.95 just for the MLB stuff. Stop guessing, start winning. Let's see. Cleveland, 3.5 total runs going up against Tampa Bay in a game that is, I believe, still going on. So that's exciting. We've got the news guide keeping you apprised of everything. If Adam and I see anything about this one, we will let you know. But it looks like the game tomorrow is tentatively being postponed in order for hurricane season. Good times. Everybody's having a lot of fun. Going to the pitchers here, we've got Rich Hill on the bump on one side and then Logan Allen on the other. Logan Allen, 4,800. I don't think I'm going to be touching him whatsoever. So that's good times. But on the other side, Rich Hill, somebody that at 41 years of age is just continuing to be a timeless wonder. He's the oldest player in the American League. Albert Pujols now in the National League being the oldest player on that side of it. 41 years old. Let's see, 37% hard hit percentage, 443 X slugging. Not fantastic, but 24.1% K percentage. That's enough to be relevant on a slate like this. How are you handling Rich Hill here?
Yeah, right now we have him projected to get about the same amount of ownership that he should. He has a 16.5% top two pitcher percentage, 15% ownership percentage. He's just another guy where on a lot of slates, I really would not have interest here. On this one, I have some interest just because pitching is pretty weak, but I also don't love the price tag at 9,100 on DraftKings. 23% strikeout percentage against righties is fine. Going to be facing a right-handed heavy Cleveland lineup. It is a good pitcher's park in Tampa. We know that. And Hill, is likely to give you around 90, 95 pitches if he's pitching well. So I don't mind Hill, but also not really in love with that salary. I think in a lot of lineups, I'll most likely end up either saving money at SP2 or we'll get to him later. I'd rather take a chance on Dylan Cease, I think, at his current ownership.
All right. And Logan Allen, we don't even want to be saying his name, do we?
I mean, he's 4,800, but other than that, no.
Okay, that's fantastic. I'm not going to be going that direction whatsoever. Not the greatest ballpark on planet Earth, Tropicana. We all know that. But this Cleveland Indians lineup, outside of Jose Ramirez, who I feel like we've talked about it a couple times here in the last week, how weak the third base position has been as a whole compared to other seasons until Manny Machado just went double dong yesterday. But I'm definitely seeing Jose Ramirez being a guy that I'm going to get to as a one-off like I do normally. But otherwise, the rest of this lineup, Cesar Hernandez, Ahmed Rosario, all of these guys, just not people that I'm going to be targeting. I guess Franmil Reyes being back in the fray at 3,200, that's a lot of power in that bat. That would be a great one-off. 52.5% hard hit percentage, just has a track record of being a beast from San Diego to Cleveland. Other than maybe him and Jose Ramirez is like a two-man, what else might you be getting to with Cleveland?
Yeah, I really like the two-man with Reyes and Ramirez. I was going to say the same thing. Just a lot of power there and a very cheap price tag on Franmil Reyes. Rich Hill is getting some ownership, so I think there is some merit to taking bats against him. But again, it's just really tough, I think, to full stack this team. Like, you're not getting a ton of power upside from guys like Hernandez or Ahmed Rosario. You don't have the platoon advantage with Eddie Rosario. The ballpark's not great, but I do really like the power in Jose Ramirez and Franmil Reyes.
We got a question in the premium Slack, and I think we're making fantastic enough time that I thought I might bring this up. Again, we have a lot of people. This might be their first day coming off of the 4th, coming off of NBA this weekend, where they're kind of coming into the MLB streets. And Christopher Reidman in the premium Slack, where we want to be addressing all the questions of our subs. Could you touch on how to determine stacking, as in 5-2, 4-4, 4-3? Just giving them a little bit of context. I mean, we're talking about this two-man. Just because the rest of the lineup doesn't seem that exciting, we're kind of targeting them as a two-man. You can go into Fantasy Cruncher, maybe boost them a little bit, make them a percentage where you get like 10%. You remove 1, 2, and then the rest of the lineup, you just keep the two bats and Jose Ramirez and Franmil in the fray. Is there a way that you handle that? And then just talk about how you go about stacking on a slate like this.
Yeah, I mean, typically I just run 5-mans, different, 5-3, 5-2, 5X, and you just do that in Fantasy Cruncher by setting, choosing your stacks. I think there are cases for 4-4, 4-3. I'll use those more often on smaller slates, I think. But yeah, like when we're going through kind of just like normally I end up getting to mine mostly based on the top stack tool and just using that in conjunction with Fantasy Cruncher and projections and everything. But going through talking about games, like when I'm looking, if I'm saying, I like this team as a stack, normally it's because there's like several hitters that I think are in a very good spot. Whereas, like you were saying with Cleveland, Hernandez, Rosario are fine, but the guys that really stand out are Jose Reyes, Franmil Reyes, and Jose Ramirez, Franmil Reyes, and then there's like a really big drop off. So to me, that looks like a team that I'm pretty unlikely to like be 5-man stacking a ton.
Or basically all the hitters are having to go off against Rich Hill, whereas I find that difficult for some of these other hitters within the stack. You would need Rich Hill to be performing very poorly, and that's kind of what you're looking for with your 5-man stack in general. Is you're kind of hoping the starter ends up getting beat up, and then you get into a bullpen or you get into a situation where everybody's in a positive position to score and they're positively correlated. So it all works together. On FanDuel, that's going to be 4-4 and 4-3 for you. You only have the 8 total spots. You have a utility spot, so you're able to play 2 first basemen, or if there's 2 catchers, like the White Sox come to mind, where you have Collins, you have Yasmani Grandal, or before the other dude who's been hurt for a little bit, Mercedes for the White Sox. But you're able to play them in multiple spots and make stacking a little bit easier over on their site. But you can only get up to 4 batters, where on DraftKings you're getting 5. So hopefully that helps a little bit for your question. Again, it's a great thing to be able to rehash, and always kind of reminds me to go back to the basics on certain things, on why you're doing them and why you're trying not to get too cute with some of the 4-3-1 and some of the 3-3-2 stuff over on DraftKings. But Cleveland and Tampa Bay will finish this up. Tampa Bay side, we know the usual suspects that we're kind of going to here. If we're not going to have interest in Logan Allen, I mean, this is a big total for Tampa Bay. We know Wander Franco is going to be coming to fruition here at some point. The number 1 prospect in all of baseball here. I'm not expecting him to be like Vlad Guerrero Jr. getting called up, but definitely somebody that hit a home run yesterday, starting to get a little bit more getting acclimated to MLB baseball. Randy Arozarena hasn't been as fantastic, but this Tampa Bay team seems like a pretty good team to 5-man stack.
Yeah, I think so. The ballpark not favorable, but Logan Allen, not a guy that strikes out a lot of hitters, certainly struggles with power from either side of the plate, but especially from the right side. 268 expected ISO since the start of last season, 243 if you go back to 2019, 218 expected ISO to lefties since the start of 2019. So he's been just a pretty good matchup for everybody. And you have plenty of power in this lineup for Tampa Bay. Manny Margot leading off, Randy Arozarena second, Franco third, all from the right side. Austin Meadows is perfectly fine against left-handed pitching from the left side. I think going down the lineup a little bit, Mike Zunino, a very high upside catcher option, probably not going to get tons of ownership because he's relatively expensive. And because when you look at the catcher position, you have JT Realmuto not in the lineup, so scratch that. You have Wilson Contreras leading off for the Cubs. That's going to be a really popular spot to go to. You'll probably see some people punt with Andrew Knapp from the Phillies on the other side of the game. So I think that you probably get pretty low ownership on Mike Zunino, who has massive power upside here.
JT Realmuto was 2,800 over on FanDuel. I'm being a sick puppy and playing cash because I think you've inspired me a little bit with some of the cash stuff, because it's kind of like a once every couple of days. But with the new people coming in from NBA, it feels like a good time to be jumping in the cash streaks and the cash streets.
Yeah, I still wouldn't play Realmuto though, since he's not in the lineup.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that I can't do that. Yeah, I'm saying that he's 2,800 on FanDuel, and that was like a de facto.
Oh, right.
Normally in the 4-hole kind of a thing, and it's a game that, so we'll get to that one. I have a big question about cash and how you'd kind of go about building your lineup when we have such value that exists on the slate. But anything else that you want to touch on with this game, or move on?
No, I think we can move on.
All righty. So we're going to Minnesota. We got the White Sox going into target field, 5.4 implied runs for the White Sox, 5.1 for Minnesota, 10.5 total here. That's a nifty little total. Part of that is just flat out the atmosphere that you're going to get here in target field. 96 degrees today, 30% humidity, with the wind blowing out to right, with some of these lefties, these switch hitters going up against Dylan Cease. I mean, you want to talk about a feast or famine spot. I think Dylan Cease is a guy that we both like a lot as a raw pitcher, has all the talent in the world, top 2 pitcher percentage. I haven't seen this much disparity pretty much ever on the top pitchers tool, but he's 6th right now in top 2 percentage, 16.4%, tied there with Rich Hill. I think there's definitely more strikeout stuff that exists with a guy like Dylan Cease, but Oh boy, you are playing with fire here, but only 1% owned. How are we not taking shots on Dylan Cease in large field tournaments?
Yeah, it's actually pretty similar. I think to the last time Cease pitched, you had a very similar like slate breakdown where he was relatively expensive, and you had someone I don't know if it was Woodruff or not, but you had someone similar to Woodruff that was like not that much more expensive that looked really good. You had someone similar to Joe Musgrove that was less expensive that looked really good, and then you had Dylan Cease in this relatively difficult matchup at a pretty expensive price tag, just getting no ownership. I'm still really interested here, especially on a slate like this where pitching's not very good, especially in terms of upside. Cease has the third highest strikeout percentage on the slate if you ignore Tyler McGill's numbers over his couple of starts. The Twins are missing Josh Donaldson. They're missing Nelson Cruz. So, yeah, you are taking two strikeout prone right-handed bats out of the lineup, but you're also taking two very good hitters out of the lineup. And they're running a predominantly left-handed lineup out there, but it hasn't really been much of an issue for Cease this year. He's struck out 29.9% of lefties. That's actually higher than his strikeout percentage against righties. He's allowed a 279 expected WOBA. That's lower than the expected WOBA he's allowed the righties. So I still think it looks like a very high upside spot for Cease. It is risky. Like you said, the Twins still have decent hitters. They're still, playing a game in 95, 96 degree weather. It's still a risky spot, and that's reflected in the 4.8 implied run total for the Twins. But I think Cease's ceiling is very high here, and I'm very interested in tournaments as long as his ownership projection stays down, sub 5%.
184 ISO for Minnesota against right-handed pitching. That's tied for third best in MLB. So yeah, as you said, just going to be an absolute feast or famine spot here. I want to be on both sides of it. That's for sure. I mean, it's as good of a hitting environment as you can really ask for there in Minnesota today. So yeah, I'm going to be going there. Bailey Ober. He's kind of been a guy that a lot of DFS people were touting here the last couple of weeks. I hate that word, but that is what it was. Bailey Ober, not a guy that I'm super excited to be rostering by any means. Haven't been yet. I know there was a little bit of potential coming out, but right now giving up a 471 expected slugging, 43.8% hard hit percentage, keeps the walks down, but there's enough bats here in this White Sox lineup that I am not going to be getting too much Bailey Ober today.
He's really struggled with left-handed bats so far this year as well. It's a small sample. He's thrown 231 total pitches to lefties. He's only struck out 19% of lefties. He's allowed a 340 ISO, 271 expected ISO. So, been getting unlucky, but is still doing really poorly. 420 expected WOBA to lefties. And so then you look at this lineup that the White Sox are running out. Yohan Moncada, Brian Goodwin, Yasmani Grandal, Gavin Sheets, all hitting from the left side in the top six. You can throw Adam Eaton and Lurie Garcia in at the bottom also as lefties. The only righties in this lineup at the top, Anderson and Abreu, are both good. Andrew Vaughn, one of the top hitting prospects in baseball, has plenty of power from the right side. So very, very dangerous lineup. And I think just sets up specifically very poorly for Bailey Ober. Also some issues in, I mentioned before, but I have data on 165 pitchers that threw at least 25 pitches as a starter prior to June 6th. Since June 6th, when they started really cracking down on foreign substances, Bailey Ober has the seventh highest decrease in total spin rate. His fastball spin rate is down 244 rotations per minute, which I believe is the second highest behind only Trevor Bauer. So it's tough to completely trust that because he only made one start prior to June 6th, but that's not the trend you want to see happening. And then on top of that, you have this really tough matchup with the White Sox.
And how good has Gavin Sheets been out of the gate? I mean, this guy is pretty darn good at baseball, I think, at this point in time. I mean, now up still in the 6 hole here at this point, but 318, 2 homers, 1.042 OPS since getting called up here. A very limited sample size here. I believe he's been in like 7 games here up to this point, but was he a pretty well-regarded prospect? I feel like I saw that on FanGraphs that he was.
FanGraphs has him as the White Sox number 24 prospect.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. So he's kind of come out of nowhere here at this point in time. AAA ball early in the season, 292 average here in just 41 games there. 7 homers. So there's a decent enough pop here. Yeah, just this murderer's row of lefties here that's kind of going to make it an issue. And then the right-handed bats are Tim Anderson and Jose Abreu. So have some fun, Bailey Ober.
Yeah, exactly. Just sets up, I think, as a really, really tough spot here. And going back to Sheets, he has FanGraphs. They do have him with 70 grade raw power, which for anyone not familiar, the scouting scale goes from 20 to 80, with 80 being the best. So 70 grade raw power is just insanely good. They have him with like 45 grade game power. But when you're talking about facing a pitcher in Ober that has failed to miss bats against lefties, I start to become a little bit more interested in just how far can this guy hit the ball, because he's probably going to put it in play.
Yeah, he was the second round pick. It was in 2017 for it. So, I mean, he was their second round pick. So a well-regarded prospect coming into it. Didn't necessarily come to fruition. He was decent enough in double A ball. I mean, I obviously he made it to the majors here pretty quick, 25-year-old. And it's been a decent enough outfield. Obviously, they've had a number of injuries to open up some opportunity for some guys in this spot, one of which also being Brian Goodwin, who we kind of know his potential that he has going up against righties. Only 3,100. I mean, it's the same situation we saw yesterday where all of these outfielders on this team are just so cheap for Chicago, and makes it kind of easy to pair the stack with some of the boppers and Tim Anderson and one Jose Abreu, but definitely a team. I feel like I still could take the one-offs in some spots. Are you going to primarily be stacking up this team, or is it going to be something you're kind of mixing and matching them all over the board? Because I think I'm just going to scatter shot them.
Yeah, I think I'll certainly have some White Sox stacks, but I'll probably also be mixing and matching because I just think you're not going to find that many spots on this slate that have better power potential here than these hitters in this hitting environment going up against Ober.
And on the other side, Luis Arraez, been very, very surprising as far as the amount of power potential. 451 expected slugging for him is kind of surprising for me. Larnach, 471 here, getting up in the two-hole, or a Polanco, Kirilloff. I will say the one thing that just sticks out like a sore thumb on this lineup, no Nelson Cruz. So, I mean, that helps our Dylan Cease case quite a bit. As you said, been pretty good against lefties here. I mean, if he can get through the Kirilloff Kepler situation, kind of limit some of the power. Miguel Sano, that's a nice guy to see in the lineup, 4K potential. Good spot for Cease, but also a spot to be stacking up the Twins, sure, too.
Yeah, and I think individually, Trevor Larnach's salary at 2,700 on DraftKings really stands out. This is someone that is a top prospect, number 2 prospect in Minnesota's system, 34 in baseball, according to FanGraphs. And you're getting him at a very cheap salary, hitting second. You know, the outfield position is very good on this slate, but 2,700 is just too cheap for this guy.
But Jenkins, I'm playing 100% Jorge Polanco tonight just for you. Hopefully you're just playing one lineup then, because then it's fine. Then you can absolutely fire it up, give it a go in that regard. Philadelphia 5.1. Oh, before I get to that, I got to bring this up. Terry McBride is going to be doing a survey that if he's going to put the link into chat, I believe. Is that correct, Jordan? He's going to be putting the link into chat. All right. And if you fill out the survey, we have some goodies and some giveaways. So you're going to want to be signing up for that. Just pop in there, MLB YouTube in-show survey, fire that up. Terry McBride, he does all the things. You know him in front of the screen. He does so much work for us behind the screen as well. One of the guys who's doing a lot of the emails. If you have complaints, if you have issues, if you have anything, you can email him. He is so quick at responding, so helpful. So definitely take the time to fill that out. And we have some giveaways and some goodies coming to you from that. So check it out. Moving along, Philadelphia, 5.1 implied run total. Chicago, 6.1. This is the game of the night to be discussing. I don't think we're going to be discussing much pitchers here unless you have something that you're looking at that I don't, because Matt Moore, over 2.5 home runs per 9. Zach Davies sucks. What are we doing here?
Going to the bats. I mean, the only concern to start this off, the only concern is the ownership here. This is kind of similar to when we talk about Coors Field games in large field tournaments. There's still 16 other teams on this slate. If you look at the top stack percentage of the Cubs and the Phillies combined, they're about 20%. So you're still talking about an 80% chance of neither of these teams being the top stack. But that being said, it is a very good spot for both teams. Zach Davies is decent at limiting power, but he doesn't miss a lot of bats. His strikeout minus walk percentage this season is only about 3%. Strikes out 15% of hitters, walks about 12% of hitters, about as bad as you can get in that regard. And you're getting the wind blowing out on a warm day in Wrigley, so you should see plenty of power. Cheap bats in the Phillies lineup is really going to drive up ownership here. You have Herrera and Segura at the top of the order, McCutchen batting cleanup. All these guys are really cheap. Harper, of course, is really good. Hoskins has a lot of power here against the pitcher who doesn't miss bats. Didi Gregorius is cheap. Andrew Knapp, I mentioned earlier, starting in place of JT Realmuto, only 2,700 on DraftKings. So there's just a lot of different ways to get this team into your lineup, talking about the Phillies. And I think that you're going to see a lot of ownership there, but also for good reason. 9.6% chance of being the top stack, 11.8% aggregate ownership. On the other side, an even better spot, I think, for the Cubs going up against Matt Moore. He's struggled with power basically forever, gives up fly balls, gives up power to lefties, gives up power to righties, doesn't really care who's up there. 6.5 implied run total for the Cubs is the highest on the slate by a pretty large margin. They're more expensive, but I think also, in a better spot. You have Contreras, Bryant, Baez, Wisdom, all with massive power from the right side. Anthony Rizzo can do damage from the left side in the lefty-lefty matchup. More, again, just gives it up to both sides of the plate. So don't overlook Rizzo in your stacks. But, again, we also have the Cubs projected to go a bit over-owned here. 11.5% chance of being the top stack is the highest on the slate, but 17.9% ownership, also the highest on the slate by an even wider margin. So definitely pay attention to what, the rest of your teams look like. I think also to your contest selection, if you're playing a tournament with, playing a smaller field tournament with a few hundred people, it's a lot less imposing that the Cubs are going to be like 18% owned than if you're playing a 58,000 person tournament. 20% is quite a lot of lineups to have to outrun if you're stacking the same team as those guys.
How many Phillies are too many Phillies for cash? And I know that this is kind of a weird question to put together because there's so many things where salary fits out and certain players just project out so well on this slate. But what I was getting at earlier that I was alluding to was just figuring out, making sure that I'm not completely overexposed. I mean, not that the wind would change directions at this point in time. Like we're close enough to first pitch where it looks like we're for sure going to be getting that wind blowing out. But in the event that how is it possible to be overexposed to this game in cash?
I don't think so. And I mean, this kind of sounds like your underlying questions about like stacking in cash.
Yes.
And being overexposed to a team. I personally don't have a problem with it. I don't set out to stack in cash, but I'm also not, if I make my lineups and I have 5 guys from the Phillies because I think that the best catcher, two of the best outfielders, the best third baseman, best shortstop, whatever, they all happen to be on the same team. I'm not going to start making what I think are suboptimal plays just to get less Philadelphia exposure. In some ways too, you also kind of increase your floor because like it's hard. The Phillies can score 10 runs and you still can just guess wrong on the 2 hitters that do really well. But it's more likely when you have a team in a good environment like this that they do at least put a few runs on the board, and having more hitters from that team actually makes you more likely to hit on the correct one. So it's not something day to day that I really care about too much. Like if I have 5 hitters from a team, that's fine. I'm not saying I think you play 5 Phillies in cash today, but if I ended up with it, I wouldn't start like subbing any of them out.
All right. Yeah, it was just a selfish question, I think, a little bit for me as well. I always feel, I don't know, maybe it's just the NBA player in me too, where it's like you wouldn't put, if it was Houston, you'd for sure put 4 or 5. It just comes down to point per dollar. And it's a different situation in MLB where you're kind of all those hitters are basically, it's if Matt Moore is like for whatever reason he's on in this spot or something. I'm not sure if that's really the right way to put it. I mean, it becomes like a salary thing where certain players you kind of start with your pitchers and you build down from there. But right now I have 4 Phillies that I would be playing. That doesn't seem crazy to you?
No, not at all.
Okay, good. Just wanted to double check as we're kind of moving in, but anything else to touch base with on this game? Because you can just play all the dudes. I mean, it would have been nice to see JT Realmuto there, but Andrew Knapp, not going to be a guy that has a ton of power here. 35.4% K percentage is kind of irrelevant because I have no interest in Davies, but anything to touch base on?
No, I mean, I think that's about it. You're looking to bats here, but again, just as the contest you're playing gets larger, I would start to have less interest in the bats in this game solely because I'm not really trying to just get luckier than 10,000 people tonight.
That's probably a good idea. Yeah, I'm going to be half the field, I'm sure. And that's kind of my hard and fast rule that I have for it. But also something that we should be talking about, our sponsor today, Jock Market. If you haven't heard, Jock Market has turned fantasy sports into the stock exchange. You don't have to wait until the end of a game. You don't have to sit around and wait for the payouts. You can basically do it instantaneously every second of every single game. That's NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA. You can make real money every hour. It's using the pregame IPO to pick shares of your favorite players. Then you buy, sell, or hold during the game based on your analysis. If you see, somebody get pulled out, like let's say yesterday, Rendon gets pulled out, or like in the middle of the game here after hitting a home run. Sell your shares at that point in time before, because he's guaranteed to get no fantasy points after that. Same thing applies if somebody gets inserted into a lineup who might have been completely unowned. You might be able to get somebody for $1 and they have the opportunity, with the bases loaded to hit a home run or to at least get you some points and move their way up the payout structure. So there are definitely some opportunities that exist over at Jock Market. Use the promo code Awesemo. That's AWESEMO. You found this channel. You know how to spell it. So that's a $50 bonus on your first deposit. It's an exclusive offer just us here in the Awesemo community. So take advantage of that today. That's Awesemo for a $50 bonus. We don't have an Awesemo Hall of Fame today, so I guess we get to just keep moving ourselves down the line. We've got Detroit at Texas. This is kind of an interesting game for me because the Detroit Tigers, I write my Slate Starter article, I think coming in the aftermath of some of the things with the spin rate as we're looking into sample size, trying to figure out how much sample size is enough sample size to say that something is markedly changed. So the Tigers in the last 3 weeks have gone 12-7. They've definitely increased their run potential in the last couple. They've knocked out starting pitchers like Lucas Giolito. It's been pretty insane that they've been as capable of an offense as what they've been. And you're seeing a guy right now in Colby Allard, who has the third best top 2 percentage on DraftKings today, only 7,900. It's a lefty here, a team that traditionally we're targeting up against both sidedness. Against lefties, though, on the season as a whole, 28.5% K percentage. But they're actually only the 7th most strikeouts over the course of the last 3 weeks. They've had some guys like Eric Haas who have come alive, Akil Baddoo. But what are you doing with Colby Allard today? Because I have no idea what to do.
I'm playing both sides.
Okay.
I'm pretty confident there. Colby Allard at 7,900 against what should still be a pretty weak Detroit team does have merit here. I mean, he's not a bad pitcher. He comes into the game with about a 20.8% strikeout percentage, only a 4% walk percentage, 4.15 xFIP. He's just a pretty decent pitcher. One thing that I think is a little bit scary is that the Tigers only have one left-handed bat in this lineup. Colby Allard is similar to Max Fried in that he has struck out 27.5% of lefties this year, only about 22% of righties. So not quite as good a strikeout matchup from his standpoint as it would be if you had a more balanced lineup here. He's also given up a 214 expected ISO. So you don't really have a lot of right-handed power on the Tigers. It's basically Jonathan Scope and Eric Haas as far as guys that hit for a lot of power. But you have some pop with Daz Cameron, potentially Zach Short at the bottom. So it's not a bad matchup. And again, there's just not a lot of really good pitching you're going to be confident in on this slate. But at the same time, I do think that this lineup is kind of scary for Allard, even though the hitters themselves aren't that imposing. He just has struggled a bit with righties compared to lefties this year, and you're getting 8 of them. So because he's getting the third most pitcher ownership on the slate at 29.5% right now on DraftKings, I do have interest in just stacking up the Tigers here, even though they're a relatively low probability play. 3.5% chance of being the top stack, only about 1.7% aggregate ownership right now. And if they do well, 1/3 of the field is losing a pitcher. So again, it kind of, I like the idea in these large field tournaments, especially on slates where pitching is dicey, in stacking some subpar teams against pitchers that are chalky when they normally wouldn't be. Like Brandon Woodruff is going to be chalky every single slate he pitches because he's really, really good. He's Brandon Woodruff. Colby Allard is getting a lot of ownership today, mostly because there's just nobody else to go. There's not many
by necessity.
Yeah. It's just he's popping up because everyone else is worse than him, not because he's really good. So that's when I really start to become interested in going up against him and taking my chances on a team like Detroit.
So June 6th was the date that MLB came out with everything. They started enforcing it a week later. Since that date, the Detroit Tigers, 7th in MLB with 121 weighted runs created. That's WRC plus here. I am just saying, this is an improved baseball team over the course of the last 3 weeks. It's an extremely small sample size, and that's why I bring that up. But you have Akil Baddoo and Eric Haas specifically, one WAR. They're starting to get players that are wins above replacement, which the Tigers don't put many of those dudes out on a baseball field year in, year out. So definitely something to at least bring up. I try to figure out, you want to be ahead of the curve. And so I'm trying to make some of my FanGraphs analysis basing off of that date and trying to see if there's any teams that, again, if a team like Detroit that strikes out a bunch starts making contact, and they have guys like Eric Haas who hit the ball a very long ways. I mean, that stands to reason that they're probably in a better spot than what the public is anticipating them to be, correct?
Yeah, and I think, like, more or less, I think you could see the gap kind of shrink between maybe some of the bottom end offenses, like just getting, again, like not that they're going to catch the top offense. Like the Tigers aren't going to become a good offense. They're still going to be below average. But I think you're going to see the bottom maybe not be as low, the floor not be as low for these bad offenses. Because in a lot of cases, when you talk about a team like Detroit, it's that they don't even put the ball in play. Like pitchers just walk all over them and dominate them. And if you're going to see just the strikeouts go down across the board in the league, when hitters make it to the major leagues, for the most part, they can hit the ball far when they make contact. One of the biggest issues they run into as they progress levels is they just stop making contact. So I think you are just going to see more upside, and it makes sense. I mean, you're going to see more upside even from the bad teams as pitchers get worse.
All right. Well, that makes me feel like that's definitely something I'm going to keep doing going forward here. try to just find small edges here or there, see if there's certain teams that are starting to make contact a little bit more above expectation for sure. On the Texas side, a guy who started to hit the ball very hard himself, Joey Gallo. Welcome back, my dude. 21.2 degree launch angle here on the season. We know that he can just murder the ball. That started to trend up a little bit here. 43.4% hard hit percentage, getting walked nearly a 20% clip. So he can just definitely get on base for you here in some spots too. Adolis Garcia, I guess Eli White, not a guy I'm expecting much power out of, but definitely has a sprint tool there. What are you going to be doing with Texas?
I like the spot for Texas, but right now I think going a little bit over-owned, both in terms of top stack percentage and just looking individually at the hitters in this lineup that I would be interested in. Like Joey Gallo is getting 14% ownership, Nate Lowe's at 12, Dahl's at almost 12, Garcia is a little bit lower owned at 5. But it seems like a team where they're just a little bit more popular than I would like. I still think that they're fine. Like Willie Peralta is not a particularly good pitcher. He's not a high strikeout guy. He'll give up some power. So I do like Joey Gallo. I do like Nate Lowe. I'm just a little bit shying away a little bit because of their projected ownership.
Yeah, we've got a super chat here too that I definitely want to touch base on. Dowlin's 89. Thank you. $1.99. Alberto or White? We just talked about White here in this spot. Would you be going Alberto in Kansas City here in the next game, or Eli White? 2,200 on FanDuel for last piece in on cash.
Probably White just because he's leading off.
Okay. I think that's a great call as well. Cincinnati at Kansas City, bringing us, that's a nice little segue into our next spot here. On the top end here for Cincinnati, Vladimir Gutierrez, not a very good pitcher, 500 expected slugging, does limit some hard contact here and there. But yeah, Kansas City's still going to be popular and for good reason here in this spot. On the other side of the bump, you've got Mike Minor, who I like as a real-life pitcher, not a guy I play a ton in fantasy because it always seems like he's just a little bit too expensive. 7,600 today kind of feels like a better price point on him, about appropriately owned. I was getting to right about the field there. I don't have a strong lean one way or another. I would say 23.2% K percentage is decent enough in this spot. Cincinnati, an imposing offense. What are you going to be doing with pitching here?
Yeah, so I don't have a real strong lean one way or the other on Minor either. I think the price tag just puts him in play, because he's only 7,600 and he's a decent real life pitcher. To me, he's just like completely average. xFIP is average, strikeout percentage is about average, 1.4 home runs per 9. So I don't mind Minor here if he gets into some lineups. I will say that when I crunched some tournament lineups earlier in the day, and I did an update right before the show, but I was getting to a lot of Cincinnati as one of the more under-owned offenses on the slate, according to the top stack tool. Sixth highest chance of being the top stack at 7.5%. Only 3.3% aggregate ownership right now. Minor does give up some power. Like I said, 1.4 home runs per 9 against right-handed hitters this year, 22% strikeout percentage, 216 expected ISO. Kind of scary when you talk about a lineup that has Nick Castellanos, Tyler Stevenson, Eugenio Suarez, Aristides Aquino. These guys all have power. Jonathan India gives you some upside, especially with stolen bases. Jesse Winker is just a good hitter in general, as is Joey Votto. So it's a kind of scary Cincinnati lineup that's not getting much ownership. It does look like it's warm in Kansas City as well, which is nice. So if ownership holds how it is right now, even though I do respect Mike Minor, I think the Reds are a team that kind of just check like every box in tournaments because they have power in their lineup. They're going under-owned in terms of chance of success. They're facing a pitcher in Minor who, while he's not the most popular on the slate, he is getting some ownership at about 13%. So it kind of just like hits all those boxes that I like in tournaments.
Definitely there with you. I think that makes a lot of sense. And, the Mike Minor playing these guys in the 7K range today, it's just kind of a who's who trying to mix and match them together, hoping one of them pops in the right lineup. But Cincinnati definitely going to be a good spot to be going to. That question was actually for a GPP. So Eli White, and then going to the other side of this, this helps because Hanser Alberto, I believe, was the other name that he had. We're still going to go Eli White in a GPP. Yes.
Yeah, I still think it's Eli White.
All right, cool. Whit Merrifield, been hitting the ball very, very softly of late. 29.7% hard hit percentage on the season. Still an elite player. We know that he's an elite tool, multiple tool player for the Kansas City Royals. Carlos Santana, Sal Perez murders the baseball. Ryan O'Hearn in the 4-hole. Price is still down on him in some spots. Been a little bit better since he got recalled. But what are you going to be doing with Kansas City here? Because it's the same fantastic hitting environment for them.
I think it's a really, really, really good spot. I think the ownership is terrifying.
Yes.
Gutierrez this year hasn't struck out a lot of guys. He's given up plenty of power. 283 expected ISO to righties, 191 to lefties, sub 20% strikeout percentage against both sides of the plate. You go through the Kansas City hitters this year, and they actually have power. You mentioned Merrifield's been struggling a bit, but we know who he is. Carlos Santana, 236 expected ISO. Perez 252, Loughran 233, Soler 211. Like these guys can do a lot of damage here against a pitcher who's not very good and doesn't miss a lot of bats. The problem is just that right now we have them with a 6% chance of being the top stack, which is pretty solid for a 9-game slate, but 12% aggregate ownership because they're so cheap. This is another team that I think shows up in cash builds. Ryan O'Hearn's really cheap. Soler is cheap. So you're just going to get a lot of ownership there. And if you go individually by players, right now we have O'Hearn, Merrifield, Perez, Alberto, Hunter Dozier, and Carlos Santana, all projected over 10% ownership on DraftKings. Jorge Soler at 8.3. So it just looks like it's going to be a spot where it's difficult even to like differentiate within the stack and say, oh, well, if I go to this guy, he's low owned, I'll do that. It looks like it's going to be really, really tough for me to get to in larger field tournaments. I'm not saying that I'm confident they're not going to do well because I'm not. I think it's a very good spot. But, again, you're playing, especially as your tournaments get larger, you're playing against other DFS players more so than you're just trying to project or predict who does the best. There's so much volatility in baseball. If you are looking over the course of an entire season, you're just going to be better off trying to win when the quote unquote obvious offenses do poorly than by trying to just like get luckier than everyone else when they do well.
I think that's the perfect way to lead into this game, because in the way that you're talking about the disparity in the top stack tool for one Kansas City, you're seeing the exact opposite here for the Boston Red Sox, taking on the Los Angeles Angels here. On one side of you got 5.1 implied runs for Boston, 5 for the Angels. I got to go see Shohei Ohtani hit a bomb yesterday with my fiance. We had an absolute blast. That's her favorite baseball player. That's basically, pawning off Shohei Ohtani is the reason to go to baseball games. I get to selfishly go do that now. So I'm glad that she loves him. And I mean, the guy's just special. That was like a 460-foot blast that he hit out to dead center against Thomas Eshelman. Rip that arm. Oh my God, he is so bad, but thank you so much for that. He struck him out actually in the first inning, but we don't have time to be going over this. Let's go over the pitching here in this spot. Martin Perez on one side of the bump, 40.5% hard hit percentage, only an 18.7% K percentage. I can't really see myself rostering him. Jose Suarez on the other side does limit the hard hit percentage, 23.9% K percentage here. I don't know. Is this like a large field dart that we could kind of be taking on a Jose Suarez? 4.6% chance of being a top 2 pitcher here. I don't really see it for either guy, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I have trouble getting there because of pitch count concerns. He hasn't thrown more than 60 pitches in a game since May 10th. He threw 72. Last time out, he went 5 1/3, but still only threw 56 pitches. Scored 22 DraftKings points, but he's 8,200. So you're just, I think, taking on a lot more risk than you're getting reward. If he somehow throws 40 more pitches tonight than he has in ever this season, then so be it. I have trouble getting there. It's not like it's a good matchup either. 5.6 implied run total for Boston. A lot of really good hitters in this lineup. I don't really see the reason to take a risk there. And then Martin Perez also priced up to 8K. The Angels offense, not as scary as the Red Sox, but he doesn't strike guys out. It's really, really tough for Martin Perez to put up a score at $8,000 that you have to win a tournament. It's a lot more likely he puts up a score that gives you no chance of winning a tournament.
That's probably the right way of looking at it. But so I'm alluding to what I was saying about the top stacks tool. We've got Boston, 10.3% chance of being a top stack on this slate. They are only being owned at a 4.2% clip, which is shocking because we know the amount of power, the amount of potential that exists in this offense, facing a guy, as you say, with pitch concerns there. We've got a number of bad relievers coming in from the Angels here that would be coming in relief here. I don't know. I just feel like this is, for me, going to be a team that I'm just massively overweight to, then the field as well. What are you going to be doing here?
Yeah, give me the Red Sox. I mean, second highest top stack percentage on the slate, relatively low owned at only about 4%. And you can see why when you look at the pricing. I mean, their top value percentage in the top stack tool is only 3.5%. Very similar to Cincinnati, who I said I love as a stack tonight as well. I'm perfectly fine just paying up, taking some chances on pitching, rolling the dice in some spots, because I think that when you have really cheap bats in Philadelphia, but that's a pretty mediocre offense as well. You have really cheap bats in Kansas City, but a kind of mediocre offense as well. Boston has a lot of really, really good hitters. And yeah, you have to pay for them. But if it's going to give me a path to, Boston just scores 12 runs and I only have to compete with like 4% of the field, that's a spot that I really, really want to be in. And, I think they look like one of the top stacks tonight.
Absolutely. There's really nothing you can possibly say negative about this. The ownership is not there. That's exciting to me. Up and down this entire lineup, there's power, kind of however that lineup turns out. Very, very excited to be getting down there and playing these dudes. On the other side, oh man, Shohei Ohtani. People get worried about left on left with certain players. I think that that's kind of a bias certain players have in the MLB DFS community that just needs to get squashed really quickly. When you have a guy like Shohei Ohtani who just continues to rake any and everybody, he will once again, I believe the last, I don't know, however many slates in a row, he's been my most popular one-off. Probably will again here today. I'll combine him with Jared Walsh, I'm sure, in some spots. But what are you going to be doing with the Angels?
It's always tough for me to get there when Trout's out because I just don't like any hitters really outside of like Ohtani, and Walsh. And lefty for Walsh, I don't really love Ohtani. I really couldn't care less. I'd rather he be facing a righty, I guess, but it's still fine. He's got 101 plate appearances against lefties this year. His expected ISO is over 400. He's hitting the ball perfectly fine off of lefties. We know Martin Perez isn't going to miss bats. Typically does a pretty good job of keeping the ball in the park. But Ohtani can, if Ohtani hits it, it's going far. So I still like Shohei Ohtani here. I think he's a really good one-off. He's only projected for about 3.5% ownership for one of the best hitters in baseball. You have to pay up for him. So again, you're just seeing it seems like because the pitching is so sketchy tonight, you're just going to get a lot of like Woodruff plus Musgrove plus pay down for bats lineups. So in tournaments, getting up to these guys that have the potential to just go score 30 plus fantasy points like Ohtani, I think makes a lot of sense at low ownership. But as a full stack, not really in love with the Angels here, just because I don't really like any of their hitters except for Ohtani.
We have Ohtani underneath 4%. Like, come on. I'm going to have gobs of him at that number. I know that you want to talk about paying for a guy here. They are giving you no discount at 6,200, but we have a $5 super chat from Tori Langley. Thank you so much. Minor or Megill today. There's no cash, no site given. I'm going to just say that it's DK unless I'm corrected. Mike Minor or Megill.
They're kind of the same play to me. I would lean towards Megill. I have him projected a little bit higher. He's a little bit cheaper, but he's also more popular. So like it kind of depends what you're looking for. I think they're very similar plays in terms of I think they're fine. I'll also be terrified about every lineup that they're in.
Pretty much. That's the right way of looking at it. Let's round this puppy out. Washington at San Diego. Into Petco they go. 3.3 implied runs for Washington. It's actually dipped to around 2.9 here since we've been on the show. San Diego on the other side, 4.9. Dipped slightly to 4.7, but that is basically negligible. I really like San Diego side here. I guess John Lester is the supposed starter. We haven't had anything officially announced that I've seen. I do not know until one El Negro Loco in the chat, the news god himself, lets us know exactly what's going on there. He does such a good job of keeping you apprised of all the goings on here of this slate. But kind of rounding it out, we have no issue there. What are we going to do with Joe Musgrove today? Because he's a guy also that I just have a difficult time getting a gauge on what I want to do. He's definitely seen his spin rate drop off. He's definitely got potential on the other side of it here, but he's definitely going to be popular. How are you handling Joe Musgrove this evening?
It's really tough for me to figure out what to do with him because his spin rate actually has been fine. He's actually his spin rate has increased since June 6th.
What?
Which
that's fantastic.
Like not like by a lot, but it's like
okay.
It's gone up like 11. Overall, it's
RPMs.
gone up 11 rotations per minute. His fastball's up like 5. So there's not really a concern there. But his called strike plus swinging strike percentage has dropped off by 3 points. You've seen the strikeout numbers in general just go down over that stretch. So I'm not convinced that he isn't affected just because it's not showing up in spin rate. It very well could be that, he's not locating as well, which is something that's very hard to it's like the one thing in baseball, I think, that is still very hard to pull from data is like if guys is command. You can get strikes, you can get walks, you can get strikeouts, you can get all that. But if he's actually locating the ball where he wants to is very, very difficult to get. So there still is a chance that there's some underlying issue here that's leading to the decrease in strikeouts. But at the same time, the Nats do have a sub-3 implied run total. Musgrove has the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate. And most importantly, he's only $8,700. If he were 10K or something like that, those concerns become a lot bigger. But at 8,700 for a guy with a 30+% strikeout percentage, that's kind of making up for a lot of the concerns or minor red flags that I just brought up. So I think Musgrove does look good. I fully expect him to be my SP2 in cash. If you are playing tournaments, I have no issue maybe going Woodruff and someone other than Musgrove to get to lower owned pitchers because the Woodruff plus Musgrove pairing is going to be so popular. But just talking in terms of like projection and probability, I think Musgrove is the SP2 on DraftKings.
Yeah, and for Washington, there's a number of guys who can actually hit the ball pretty high and far. Josh Bell, Juan Soto, 52% hard hit percentage or better for both of them there in that spot. We'll kind of be waiting on that lineup here as well. We got those two lineups. I think San Diego already had their lineup in. There it is, yes. But just waiting on Washington here. But what are you going to kind of be doing with them? I don't see any interest in trying to pick on Joe Musgrove. Maybe a Juan Soto one-off or something of that sort. But what are you going to be doing?
Yeah, I could see the Soto one-off or like a Bell one-off or something, but Schwarber not being in makes this lineup a lot weaker as well. It takes a lot of upside away. So yeah, I mean it's tough. Like we actually have them with a lower top stack percentage than the Mets against Woodruff. So it's kind of the same thing where it's like if you are dead set on stacking against a 42% owned pitcher, that's fine. You're definitely going to benefit when that very low probability comes through. But for me, I think I would rather just take some other spots here. I think I would rather target some of these pitchers that are a little bit lower owned than Musgrove, but that I also have a bit less confidence in.
And finishing it out, Tommy Pham, Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado, Will Myers, all four of those righties going up against a guy, if it's supposedly John Lester here. No Eric Hosmer in that lineup. I would assume that they're just kind of inferring that it's going to be John Lester with this lineup. But how are you going to be treating San Diego? Because only a 3.5% top stack potential. But I think that it's greater than that for at least some of these guys to be going yard against John Lester, who's just abysmal.
Yeah, I think, if we assume it's Lester, the top stack potential and the Vegas line both seem just kind of strange to me. I guess it is only like 68 degrees in San Diego. Maybe that's it. But Lester this year has struck out 13% of right-handed hitters. He's allowed a 202 expected ISO. You have Pham, Tatis, Machado, Myers, like from the right side. I'm kind of surprised that the line is so low. I'm kind of surprised the top stack percentage is so low. Because so much of my stuff is automated, I kind of assume I just end up not getting a lot of the Padres if the top stack tool still looks like it does around mock. I also fully am prepared to just be pissed off when they scored.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I love the power at the top of that. We're going to get ourselves on out of here. That's the MLB Deeper Dive. We've got the Live Before Law crew, the NBA crew coming into the MLB streets, Loughran and Josh. It's going to be a fantastic time. Definitely stick around. Any final words for the people, Adam?
I think this is a slate where you just, from like a general standpoint, keep in mind that you don't care about winning any one particular day. You're just trying to take a strategy in tournaments that wins over the course of a season, because there's a lot of chalk tonight that looks very good, but that also is very popular compared to some other good spots. And I think it's just, you have to keep in mind that, yeah, you might lose tonight, but as long as you're playing a strong strategy over the course of a season in tournaments, you should come out ahead.
Love it. And that's going to be it for us. As I said, Loughran and Josh coming up here next. Hitting that like button, subscribe button, and notification bell go a long way for us. He's Adam. I'm Eric. Best of luck tonight.
lot of names I don't recognize.
A lot of names. All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com live before lock show, MLB edition. Dave Loughran joined by Josh Engleman. A lot of basketball lately, but we're traversing into the MLB waters, Josh. Today's show presented by Jock Market. We'll get into that in just a moment. But you know what? I'm looking forward to it. We got a 9-gamer to wet our beaks with. None of this 15-game Tuesday, Friday nonsense. That'd be a lot. Yeah. And I'm just happy to have everyone with us to kick off a little MLB action for the first time all year.
Yeah, when I looked at it, I was like, oh, if this would have been like a legitimate full slate, we would have had a real problem on our hands. I was just not equipped for it.
If this was a Tuesday, yeah, I'm sick.
Yeah, I definitely is mildly ill in that case. But we are here. We're going to talk some baseball the best that we can. We'll probably end up talking about basketball by 6:30 if I had to guess, but we'll see.
No, we're good. I so badly wanted to get into the Ben Simmons trade conversation, but that is why you guys tune into the NBA strategy show tomorrow at 10 a.m. because, Josh, it's not gone yet. It's just not every day anymore. But tomorrow morning, I think we're gonna be on a bit of a heater ourselves.
It's gonna be a good one. I'm excited for it. Fresh series, like fresh stuff to talk about. It's gonna feel really good. Oh, and we haven't talked in days.
Yeah, I know. Live before lock too. All of that. But still tune into all of the baseball shows as well. We'll be rotating through it as well. And of course, great show from our boys, Eric Lindquist and Adam Scherer. Ship my money, DFS. I really don't get, strategy show. He had this nice new hat on. He got it from Montana. It had some, I don't know, corny saying on it about like live life.
Live life. Yeah.
Yeah. Like something you'd see in a 40-year-old's kitchen, right? Like love, live, laugh. And he had it on the brim. And
like
then
a greeting card with like a kitty cat on it.
Exactly. Yeah. The hat was made by Hallmark. And he comes on to the live before lock show. Lo and behold, he's got that baseball hat that looked like it'd been hit by a semi truck a couple of times. So he'll get
there. Yeah. We're working on it. We're working on it.
Anyway, I hope you already hit the thumbs up for those guys. It was a great show. I watched every second of that, listened to every second of that, watched a little bit of it. But if you didn't yet, hammer that thumbs up for us. Help us get to 251 likes away, Josh, before we get started from hitting 200. That would be a great way to start this show.
Oh, that'll happen. Faux show.
All right. And subscribe to the channel. Well on our way to 60K. We're almost at 56. We're trying to get to 60 by the start of the NFL season. Simply cannot do it without you guys. Appreciate all the support. And if you want to join the channel here, join Team Awesemo over at the YouTube with the emojis, the badges that go up over time, and some other features as well that we're working on. Go ahead and hit that join button. If not, that's all right. You don't have to be ready. I'm not going to hold it against you. All right. So here's what we're doing, Josh. We haven't done an MLB live before lock, I don't think, ever together, as a matter of fact.
I would guess the answer is that we have never done this together.
Right. But we've done a lot of shows together. Right.
We have.
So I think we'll figure this thing out. Instead of going game by game, what those guys did, we did it on the strategy show this morning. We have all the games up on the sidebar there. We're not going to go down that, right? But we're going to have them there just for reference, give you the odds, give you the implied totals for all of them. In the lower, you'll see the topics. Let's first just kick it off with the top pitchers on this slate, because that term can be used very loosely today. You really do not have a lot that stands out. If you're just taking a look, you got a 9-game slate, generally speaking, with 18 pitchers toeing the rubber, you'd think we'd have a lot more than Brandon Woodruff and basically Brandon Woodruff, like a very high-owned Joe Musgrove as well. But let's start with Woodruff, not because he isn't nasty, 30+% strikeout stuff, all of that, but more so because of the fact that he is easily the highest-owned pitcher. And there's a guy in Dylan Cease, $800 less expensive than him. I'm not saying you have to love him today, but just for reference, who also has good strikeout stuff, bit of a tougher matchup, not a great park or conditions today, given the weather, getting what we have over on our top pitchers tool projected for 1.6% ownership compared to Woodruff's 43.7. It's crazy.
1.6% is more than what I'm getting to, though, unfortunately. Okay. So I am not getting to Cease. I am lighter on Woodruff as well. I think he is going a tad over-owned as we speak. I think it's just a little bit easier to get to, like, if we're comparing Woodruff and Musgrove, which is unquestionably the cash combination you're going to be seeing on DraftKings. I prefer getting to Musgrove over Woodruff because I just think the salary is there, and I need that extra salary spoiler alert for the future of this show, I'm going to have an absolute ton of the Red Sox, and they aren't exactly cheap. So more Musgrove for me, a little bit less Woodruff for me. Not that I don't think Woodruff is good. To me, he's the second best pitching option on DraftKings. I just think the ownership is creeping up a little higher than I would have really liked. I'm actually going to the opposite side of Woodruff in that game. I have no concept of how to say this dude's last name. I don't know why it's any of this.
You're honest.
At least I don't know why most of this is spelled the way that it is. I've never seen Tyler spelled the way that it is here, but Tyler Megill. I don't know, man. Look, pronunciation is not going to be my strong suit right now. He is actually the guy that I'm getting to most at just 7,200.
Yeah, I'm with you too. And I started building lineups a little while ago, coming across a lot of him. Now, the funny thing is I looked at it and I had a tougher time with the first name because I don't think it's Taylor, but it's Tyler with an O, which is just a little odd.
I don't know, man.
That's okay. But the thing is, this guy had not made a lot of major league starts, or as a matter of fact, this guy had not made a lot of starts in terms of like higher than single A ball, right? Listen to this. So he's made 2 starts at the MLB level. He's 25 years old. He's pitched just over 9 1/3 innings. Prior to that, he pitched 3 starts, 14 1/3 innings at AAA. That was also this year. And then he pitched 5 starts, 26 frames in AA earlier this year. My apologies. He did make 1 start in 2019, nothing in 2020 because of COVID for 5 innings. So he's kind of wet behind the ears, but he does have some decent strikeout stuff. Only a 10.5% swinging strike rate this season in those 2 starts. But it feels like you're going to have to just bite the bullet with some of these mid-range guys. And from what I heard you saying earlier is if you have no Dylan Cease, and I think that makes total sense, but you're also underweight on Woodruff, that means you're going to have a lot of mid-range, and I'm talking just DraftKings for a moment here with 2 pitchers, a lot of mid-range pairings and not any of the high-priced guys.
Musgrove, Megill, or however the hell you're actually supposed to say it, Mike Minor, Max Fried, Bailey Ober. I'm getting to a little bit of Willie Peralta, which doesn't really make me feel all that great, but it's happening nonetheless. I'm staying pretty low in salary on DK today, and so much of that is being driven by the fact that I just love the Red Sox bats, given their current projected ownership. Yeah, and it's not that I don't like Woodruff. He's obviously fantastic. I use a lot of steamer projections as my baseline. 27% projected K rate for Megill, 10% walk rate, a 376 FIP. Like all that looks really, really good to me just as a baseline.
Somebody asked, didn't the Brewers just win 10 straight? I know they're 9-1 over the last 10, but the great thing about that is you got to lose eventually. You know, they're not going to win out, Josh. No. And more than anything too, I care a lot more about the implied odds, the totals, the park, the pitchers than I do about a win streak. Baseball is just like such a high variance sport that the Brewers have one of the lower totals on this slate. Mind you, we're in July. It gets hot. And now that they've cracked down on all these foreign substances, you would assume that you'll start seeing some more runs, but 4-run total at a pretty, I mean, it's not a neutral park. It's not like Citi Field also isn't the most pitcher friendly in the league, but it's a pretty pitcher friendly park, all things considered. So is Megill a lock? No, but 7,200 might seem a lot on other slates. On this one, you just have to kind of scratch the bottom and hope he comes through, because everything else, all the other conditions are kind of met here. The Brewers have a high enough K rate. They have an 89 WRC plus this season against righties. This has not exactly been a super potent offense.
No, not at all. And that's part of the reason why I'm getting to that opposite side of Woodruff. Just such a minimal run total. It's basically a pretty close game, but the fact that these guys are separated by $3,200, and look, I understand why they're separated by $3,200, but that savings is massive for me to be able to, 1, make more unique lineups given the amount of ownership that Woodruff is pulling in, and 2, just giving me a lineup that I think has a higher ceiling by reappropriating my pitching ownership into bigger offensive bats that are getting literally unowned based on our current projections.
Jeff Williams, thanks for the super chat, brother. He says Woodruff, Max Fried, or Woodruff, Musgrove. Okay, so Max Fried or Musgrove.
I mean, for me personally, I think Joe Musgrove is the best pitcher on the slate.
Okay, best pitching option on the slate.
Yes. Yeah. Let me be more specific. It's not that I have him projected for the most fantasy points. I think Joe Musgrove is the key, the biggest key to victory as a pitcher.
Let's take a second and talk about him, because I think this one, the ownership on Musgrove is really high. But have you seen what the Nationals total came down to?
I have it in my sheet right now, just in case you're going to tell me that it's something else. I have it at 2.8.
Okay, it's 2.9, but earlier this morning it was at 3.4. So
yeah,
I mean,
that line moved dramatically from my morning
run
prep.
already is pretty significant, right?
Yeah, it's nuts.
That's a big drop you're talking about, and I'm not surprised either to see Musgrove's ownership has also come up throughout the day from where it was earlier this morning. I mean, you don't have to love this guy, but you are seeing there's too much to like. Do you think 8,700 though is like a very reasonable price point? And we can get into, I want to get into some FanDuel pricing as well, but with the two pitchers over there on DraftKings, I want to spend a decent amount of time on that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just looking at, this is obviously like the late night hammer, but you don't see a lot of games with a 2-run gap in the leading team. I mean, it's 70% chance for the Padres to pick up a win here. I'm not super worried about that. Really, like Juan Soto and Josh Bell are probably the only guys you're worried about in the Nats lineup. They're the only guys that project as above average hitters from a weighted runs created plus perspective. I mean, this lineup is bad. Parra is bad. Escobar is bad. You still get the pitcher. I have no issue spending 8,700 on Musgrove. This feels like a fantastic spot. I'm actually surprised that he's not picking up a little bit more ownership, but at this point now, it's climbed so much in comparison to where it was earlier today, where I thought that I was just going to get a ton of Musgrove because he was underowned. Now it's lining up with my data, which isn't as fun for me by the time we get to the end of the day, but it's not changing anything for me because he's just too efficient of a guy to get to.
Yeah. It's hard to get away from it when you're looking at a guy who has a 30% K rate on the season. You'll take that any day of the week, right? Only walking batters at a 16% clip. 13.5% swinging strike rate. The numbers are there. And it's funny because he's always kind of been a control pitcher, but over the last, 2 seasons, Josh, you've actually start Musgrove to really begin to develop some legitimate strikeout stuff. There's no doubt about it. The whiff rates have climbed a ton, and he went from being like legitimately, so 2016 all the way through 2019, a 20 to 21% K rate guy to 30 plus in his last 2 seasons. Granted, one of them was shortened, but still the fact remains that his strikeout stuff is way better than it was.
Yeah, 27% strikeout rate in Steamer right now is a very different Joe Musgrove than what we were seeing, 2 years ago. Minimal walk rate still as well. To me, he looks great. I'm unfortunate if things are going well for me. I'm going to be projected to win $0 for most of this slate because I'm going to be so heavy on the Red Sox starting at 9:30 and Musgrove starting at 10:10. Like, I'm not going to be in the money unless I have like one random stack just fires itself off into the sun. I'm going to have to stay up and watch baseball tonight, I think.
No, you're not.
No, I'll be asleep.
No, you won't. Yeah, it's just tough, those late games. There's just no way you are staying up till 1 a.m. Eastern. You can't. I got to do that tomorrow. But however, that's a little different, right? But it might be nice to wake up to a notification, unless it's one of those notifications that told you won like 10 on 1,000.
Yeah, I'll get the email. Congratulations, your winnings are in your account. And then you open up that notification bell. And it's like, you won $8.64.
I opted out of those emails, man. I had enough of those. You can do that, by the way.
I thought I did years ago. They keep sending them though. Yeah, they just keep sending them. They just keep sending them.
Are there any other, there are a couple that we'll touch on here. And it sounds like I know pretty much where you're at on these top guys, but what do you do with, say, like a Rich Hill, who 41 years old, this guy, 41 years old. You know why he can still pitch at 41 years old?
Steroids.
Maybe, but no, I don't think so. Because all he throws is a curveball and a fastball that isn't fast, but he still misses bats with them. And like, what do you think what do you think he's sitting on with his fastball this year?
89.
Yeah. 88.8.
Not bad. I didn't look that shit up. I swear.
That's really solid. Which, by the way, for 41 years old, give the man some credit. He's still throwing almost 90, but it is like if you just
we talk about him being 41 years old, and that used to be a thing to be like, yo, that dude is old. He's 5 years older than me.
Isn't that crazy? I
don't like it at all.
I hate it. I used to be young and look at players like they could come straight out of college, but you look at him like that's a grown ass man right there, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Now you look at these kids coming into the league, and I'm like, that is a child. Right? Yeah. Like Zach Wilson for the New York Jets looks like a child. Okay.
Yeah.
But I still have this thing where it's like, man, Albert Pujols could be my dad. Rich Hill could be my dad, but it's not. Well, Albert Pujols, that wouldn't make a lot of sense, but you get the point just from an age.
Well, the Albert Pujols one might, because he might be 65 years old. We don't really know.
That's true. Yeah. But don't you think like you still look at them as like older dudes because they've been in the league for such a long time since we were kids.
Yeah. I mean, like Rich Hill could have been a senior when I was a freshman.
Yeah, exactly. It's nuts. Yeah. I'm 34 now, man. And time starts to move quick. The hangovers hit harder.
That's why you got to go get IVs, baby. Shout out VitaFlow.
I love that you do that. You just
so do I.
100 on an IV after a tough night. But
it's better than having to call out of work.
Yeah. I never do that ever. No, sir. You wouldn't either.
What, call out of work?
Yeah.
No, never.
Not for that.
Well, no, not this job. Like shitty jobs. I'll call out all the time for a hangover.
Exactly.
Yeah.
George Hill's pitch usage though is remarkable. Like 44% curveball, 46% four-seamer. That's all he does. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, he might not still be the guy that was with the Red Sox when we were just getting those amazing starts out of him during that first resurgence of a season, but he still has a strikeout rate of 24%. He's still K'ing almost a batter per 9. He's given up a decent amount of pop, but all in all, Rich Hill does have decent enough stuff. I guess the question though is there any interest in paying for him here when Musgrove is there, but Musgrove coming in at much higher ownership? Did I say George Hill? Dude, you guys have to know that I'm going to be getting a lot of names wrong and mixed up with basketball names. I already did it this morning. You just have to bear with me.
Yeah, I am not rostering George Hill at all today, and I don't have a ton of interest in paying $9,100 for Rich Hill. I prefer him to Cease, and I do have a little bit of Hill, but I'm under the 15% or wherever we have him right now. Like I said before, I'm basically just not paying up. The only expensive guys that I'm getting to, Woodruff, less than the field, but still a bit. Musgrove, if we're calling 8,700 expensive, but I have 9% Rich Hill right now. And I don't think that that's going to be changing all that much.
Joseph Ramirez says, I thought he was going to call him Tyreek Hill. That'll be in September, fella. Just hang on. It'll happen for sure.
No, you'll be calling Tyreek Hill Rich Hill at that point.
Yeah, exactly. The amount of times I've called the center position catcher when you make that transition. Oh, yeah. It just happens. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Don't hold it against me.
Muscle memory,
had a question,
guys.
and we'll take your guys' questions throughout the show. Of course, if you're in Slack, if you're a premium member in Slack, or you got the badge, you're a team member over on the YouTube for the Awesemos. We'll get to you first because it's the right thing to do. Couple questions though about Rich Hill on FanDuel, and I think these are very appropriate questions, Josh. He is $7,000. I mean, he's sandwiched in between Mike Minor, who he's less expensive than, and $200 more than Martin Perez.
Oh, he looks incredible on FanDuel at $7K. That price is just very, very different. Instead of being the third most expensive pitcher on the slate, he's the 8th most expensive pitcher on the slate. That changes things pretty dramatically. I love him in the mid-tier. I have no issue getting there. He certainly helps you unlock more of those expensive Red Sox bats on the FanDuel side. So I would happily get to a little bit more Rich Hill on the FanDuel side. He has my 3rd best projection, and he's not priced like that. So, yeah, FanDuel, very different story.
Any of the other guys that we hit on with DraftKings that you want to get to on FanDuel, or on the contrary, don't have much interest? Like Woodruff's 11.4 on FanDuel, Musgrove's 9.6. Max Fried 9.1. Dylan Cease is down at 8,400, which is kind of interesting because he is $3,000 less expensive than Woodruff, albeit a tougher matchup, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I would have a little bit more interest getting to Cease on FanDuel just from a relativity standpoint. Someone like Willie Peralta, who I'm paying down for on DraftKings, is a complete non-entity on FanDuel. I don't think I would go anywhere lower than our boy Tyler at 6,200.
Okay. Tyler Megill.
Yeah, I guess Megill. I don't know.
God,
it's like they changed both letters that were normal to me. Instead of him being Tyler Megill, he's like Tyler Megill, and I have to say it like an idiot.
Yeah, they put the E in the last name instead.
Yeah, it
doesn't make a lot of sense.
I assume it was just someone at the hospital wrote his name down wrong, and all of a sudden you can't fix it.
You'll get his name right tonight if he comes through. How about some value pitchers from? We've talked about some mid-range guys, and I know it's ugly down there. There's no question, but
yeah,
once you get past, I would say TM, aka Tyler Megill. Once you get past that, it starts to get a little bit ugly. Can you look at a Chase DeYoung? Can you look at a Bailey Ober? Are there any players down here that you can at least pay some attention to as a punt in some of these really expensive stacks?
Yeah. So Bailey Ober, I am getting to, based on our last ownership projection, we were somewhere in that 6% range. I'm going to try to double that one up. I'm not getting to Chase DeYoung. I'm not getting to, I'm mostly staying in the 7s. So our boy TM, Colby Allard, I guess we should probably have like a mini conversation about. He's getting a lot of ownership. To me, he is my favorite fade of a pitcher on DraftKings. He's going to be coming in like north of 20%. I'm going to come in around 5%. That's a spot that I'm immediately basically crossing off. Mike Minor, I think, can be owned pretty neutrally to the field, right around that 15% mark. But I'm not going too far down outside of Willie Peralta, actually, who's picking up no ownership, 5,200. He is a pure punt play for me. Nothing more, nothing less. He is the product of getting to extended amounts of the Red Sox.
Okay. So and let me just, I don't think on FanDuel it's really much of a necessity because so many of these other players that are priced up on DraftKings are actually pretty cheap on FanDuel. So listen, if you're looking down there, like Tyler McGill's 6,200, but
right. You're not going lower than that on FanDuel.
Right. And I don't think there's any need to whatsoever. So what's the ownership on McGill on FanDuel? I just want to pull this up. I would imagine he's not that high owned even over on there. Yeah, like 7%.
7%. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it sounds decent enough to me. So we got through pitchers. Let's hit on some stacks, some top stacks, and then contrarian stacks is always fun because there's always going to be these teams that are offering, really solid leverage scores on our top stack tool that I think you can take advantage of. And we'll dive into all that, but let's hit on the chalky ones first. Before we do, shout out to our sponsor, Jock Market. If you guys haven't heard of it yet, very cool format they've got going on here. Nothing you've seen before. Basically, they've turned fantasy sports into the stock exchange. You don't have to wait until the end of any game to make money because Jock Market allows you to buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money with guaranteed payouts for all shares at the end of each night. You got daily markets for baseball, basketball, hockey, and PGA. You can make real money every hour, every minute, down to the second of any match or game. But use the pregame IPO to pick up shares of your favorite players, then buy, sell, or hold during the game based on your analysis. That's seriously the way to do it. You're doing your DFS research. You're doing your betting, your sports betting research. Maybe you just watch the breakfast menu here with Josh and Ben Rasa, and they've just put out some beautiful props for you, or even sides, and you're saying, all right, you know what? These players are well underpriced here. I can pick them up and sell them at a premium midway or early in this game. That's the approach. Exploit, utilize, take advantage of that pregame IPO for sure if you're going over to Jock Market. Also, take advantage of the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, for a $50 bonus on your first deposit. It's an exclusive offer just for the Awesemo community, so make sure to take advantage of it today. It's Awesemo, AWESEMO, for $50. Download the app in the App Store, Google Play, wherever you reside, and check it out. Use that promo code and win some money with Jock Market. All right, so top stacks. We got to start on Chicago and Philly, right? I think that's where we got to go here. The Philadelphia Phillies have seen their implied total actually drop a little bit to 5.2, but the Cubs are up to 6.4 against Southpaw Matt Moore. The wind's blowing out 13, 14 miles per hour to right center field. Listen, Josh, and maybe you can convince me otherwise, right? I'm here for that because I know that they are getting a lot of ownership, and their ownership share is markedly higher than their top stack percentage. All of that is understood. But man, it feels like a spot where the Cubs just annihilate Matt Moore. Is it worth it for you at high ownership?
No.
Okay.
I mean, okay, so they are unquestionably the top stack. I don't think anybody is going to have any disagreements there. They showed up at the top of my sims.
And plenty of cash game locks in that lineup as well, too.
Yes, but showed up at the top of my sims quite a large margin. However, this is baseball. This is different than basketball, where, if whoever shows up as the top guy in a basketball sim, you're probably owning him like 80%. This is a little bit different. So in GPPs, I am still going to be getting to the Cubs because I still think that they're a pretty good play in that they are significantly better than everybody else. So in a way, they're good chalk, but I can't get to the ownership level that they're coming in at. So I'm expecting to be in like the 1/2 to 3/4 range on the Cubs for right now. You mentioned the Phillies after that. The Phillies are basically a straight fade for me. I will have very, very little Phillies.
Okay. Oh, wow. Anthony Davis. Always coming through for us, man. Appreciate you with the big super chat. Y'all want to know how I'm profiting today? A-team on the slate. Let's go. Thanks, man. I hadn't seen you in a little while, so it's nice to know you're here. And by the way,
he's right. It is the A-team.
I mean, sure. Wasn't Darko Novakovic the one who was trolling the other day?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you say it's so bewildered like that?
I just don't want to give him any shine.
Well, he just said the tools are really good. I haven't watched a game of baseball and I'm up money. I don't even like baseball.
Oh.
Their top stack and top pitchers tools are really good. So I'm all right reading that.
Oh yeah. He seems like a great guy.
I mean, I like this Darko fella, All right. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate it. He said, hey, no need to bring up the past. That's all right. Appreciate it. Hey, and seriously, you want to check those tools out, awesemo.com/join. Like you'll hear us talk about ownership, the top stack tool, the top pitchers tool. I think I've mentioned it to Josh a million times. Even during non-MLB season, I always talk about the top pitchers and the top stack tool because I just think they're that valuable to winning in baseball.
Likewise.
Yeah. And then
to me, like they were, when we started this up and these tools started getting released, like the baseball ones were the ones that hit first. And when top stacks came out, it was just like
game changer.
Mind blown. Yeah.
And we have a free top props tool as well, an MLB props tool, strikeouts, home runs, and all that. But go to awesemo.com/join. Want to check it out? You got any questions? Whether you want to do weekly, monthly, annual, whatever it is, you can hit me up on Twitter. I'll help you out for real to figure out what's best for you. No matter what your budget is. Like, there's so many things here. You could just do baseball. You could do all sports. And if you want to check out our tennis projections, we're doing an entire month for $1 right now. If you use the promo code TennisDFS, all one word, all caps, I think, but that's tennis projections with Wimbledon going on. $1 for the entire month. So like, even if you don't like tennis, like Darko was saying, he doesn't even like baseball, but he's winning. Projections are $1 for the month. And all the all the tennis content, $1 for the entire month. Use the promo code TennisDFS. All right. Enough of me.
Yeah. Pause. Apparently, as I mentioned before about doctors screwing up names on birth certificates, that happened to Rinpack.
Really?
So per YouTube chat.
Wow. Okay. So they spelled it RYNPAK.
Are we doing this? Are we really doing this?
No. I'm joking.
Yeah. It's also on Adam's birth certificate that he shipped my money DFS.
Yeah, I'm Laffy as well. Yo, yeah. What about Philly on the other side of this game? I don't say this just because they're Philly and I have, extreme disdain and pessimism towards them because I separate all of that when it comes to DFS. But in all seriousness, Josh, Zach Davies is not good. Okay. I think we all are well aware of that. But Zach Davies is also the type of guy that will go out there and limit you to no home runs. He might give up, 3 runs here, 4 runs, maybe even 5 runs, all on singles, maybe a wild pitch. Like, he's just that type of guy that even though he's not great and he certainly isn't good for DFS, he also has never been the greatest option to stack against, even when he was in more pitcher friendly venues.
So I don't disagree with anything that you said. I think the Phillies are the 5th best stack right now, but I think they're picking up.
I'm fine with that.
I think they're picking up too much ownership. They're actually a team that I will be largely fading in.
It's the fact that so many of them are cheap though.
It is. And I'm just going to other relatively cheap stacks, a little bit more of the Twins, a little bit more of some of the Rangers, just some of the Rangers. Let's be clear here. But at the aggregate ownership that I had previous, I did a rerun when that new Reds lineup came out, but I have my screenshot here. The three teams that were picking up the most ownership were the Cubs, the Royals, and the Phillies. Now I'm still getting to a decent amount of Cubs, but I'm coming in a little lighter. I am coming in under the field on the Royals. I am coming in under the field pretty dramatically on the Phillies. I'm taking bigger stands on the Braves, bigger stands on the Red Sox, a bit of a stand on the White Sox. It's so, for those of you guys that have been watching us do NBA shows for the past couple of months, the idea of like playing DFS baseball is a completely different game. And Adam touched on it at the end of the deeper dive. Like, I am not going to get all wrapped up in what the best plays are on baseball are probably guys I don't want a ton of in GPPs, generally speaking. So I am going to the teams that I have highly ranked that aren't pulling the same sort of chalky ownership with the hope that I'm right. I know that sounds insane, but teams like the Red Sox, if they are getting no aggregate ownership, I'm going to go out of my way to hope that they have an outlier offensive day, because if they do, I'm at the top of the tournament, bar none.
Right, so
if I'm right on the Cubs, I'm holding hands with 30,000 other people.
So here's the thing, right? And I agree with everything you said. Let's kind of break this down a little bit more though, because
sure,
there's a difference between going, say, oh, I'm going to go to the Tigers against DeGrom because they're not getting ownership.
Right.
There's a big difference between that and saying, all right, this is a slate where there's not a lot of good pitchers. So there's a handful of these stacks that are coming in at very high ownership, and other stacks that might actually be pretty appealing on other slates that still have that upside are going overlooked. I think you have to draw that distinction, right? And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but just because a stack is low owned doesn't mean that they're a great contrarian stack either.
No, not at all. Like, I have the Red Sox as the fourth best stack overall. They are not even remotely close to that from an aggregate ownership perspective. So that's why they get driven quite a bit further ahead. Whereas like the Phillies, for example, who are picking up a bunch of ownership, I have them fifth. That still ranks really well, but they're ranking higher in aggregate ownership. And that is what naturally gets pulled down. So it's not so much that I'm looking at, like, when you're high, like if I have you highly ranked, I'm probably getting to you no matter what your ownership is. Like if you're like the tippy top. But if you're sixth in my list and third in ownership, you are going to take a massive haircut, because that's where I think the people start getting overowned. It's sort of like the upper mid tier of NBA contracts where guys get bigger deals because they're like the best guy on a team, but don't really deserve that deal. That's what I feel about some of this ownership, in particularly the Phillies for today.
All right. So yeah, and that's a good point. What are your thoughts though on some of these other stacks that we haven't gotten into yet? I mean, we already talked about Boston a little bit. What is it that you love about them? They just grade out really well. They're not getting the ownership they should, and the same page with the Reds, who are really expensive. Yeah.
So the Red Sox are crazy expensive. You know, you've got JD Martinez at 6K, Bogarts and Devers at 5,500 and 5,600. But all of these guys are getting like 1%, 2% ownership. And I think that all of them are in like the 9 to 10% range of being in the optimal lineup. I'm not getting to a ton of Santana or Arroyo. If they end up being in the lineup, we'll see, I guess, in a little bit. But that 1 through 7 for Boston right now, because there's a lack of what I think are legitimate options from a pay-up perspective at pitching, I am naturally going to get to the pay-up options at hitting. And it's so much easier to get my number 4 team. That's what in ownership right now, like 9th. I mean, they're not even remotely close to the top right now. Where are they in ownership? Do you have it in front of you?
Which team? I'm sorry. Which one? The Reds or
the Red Sox?
The Red Sox. Red Sox right now are pulling 3% ownership despite having a 10.8% top stack probability with a 7.6 leverage score. So the leverage score on this slate is the highest by a lot. And Cincinnati has the second highest leverage score, also has a top 6 top stack probability, but and one of the high and not a high value percentage because they're just so expensive, but that's going to lead to lower ownership and a higher leverage score. Once you learn how to use the top stacks tool and understand it, it makes a lot of sense. So top stack probability, Josh, top value. Top value doesn't always mean good. Generally speaking, it's going to mean that they're pretty popular as well. That happens quite often. How high owned they are. Use them in conjunction with each other. And of course, the leverage score, which is just taking top stack probability minus ownership. So I think it's great to know how to use this for sure.
Absolutely. And it's essential, especially on a day like today where DraftKings put out a $6 150 max.
Yeah.
It's like they knew I was coming back because, man, did they hook me. I was like, I wouldn't have played all that much today just because I don't feel like I was prepared. I saw the contest. I was like, oh, 100K up top. Cool.
I'm in.
I'm aggressively playing baseball today.
I want to dive a little bit more into a couple of things here that probably if we hit on them separately, they're not going to do many favors. Like if you're stacking Cincinnati, right? You're stacking or the Red Sox where you've got like a JD Martinez at 6K, you got Bogarts at 5,500. Cincinnati, you can run through that lineup and there's a lot of really expensive guys. How do you make that work? Not just with pitching, maybe two mid-range guys, maybe even a cheaper option. Like I'm assuming Ober will be in a lot of those lineups, as you mentioned earlier, but are you running five-man stacks? Or are you going a lot of 4-3-1s? Are you finding good value elsewhere on other teams and plugging that in? What's making the puzzle pieces fit together with these really expensive stacks?
I'm running 5-man stacks, whatever comes up, whether it's a 3-man, a 2-man, or nothing at all. On the rest of it is just whatever shows up. It's not a priority to me. What's driving it really is the lack of high-end expensive arms and the simple fact that I just think that like the Boston guys are going dramatically under-owned, and it's marginal, but it's marginal across the board. Like Kike Hernandez is projected for 8% ownership. I think it should be 12. That's 50% more for him, but it works that way the whole way down. JD 4.5. I got him at 9. Let's like even like everybody, Vasquez, Renfroe, Devers, every one of those guys to me is slightly underowned to mildly underowned. And when you aggregate those guys as a 5-man unit, given they're just raw upside, I mean, they're expensive for a reason. They're fantastic. We're talking about, one of the best teams in the league. I can't just want to be like, oh, I guess I should jam in Rich Hill and Dylan Cease today and spend all my salary there just to be able to grab the Indians tonight. Like I'm going to go the exact opposite direction and grab cheap bats or grab low owned bats.
How much Eugenio Suarez do you have at that price in your red stacks?
I have 0% Suarez.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting to me. Okay. 0 Suarez. Who were your highest owned Reds then?
Did I say that I was getting to a lot of Reds?
I thought you said earlier that Reds, and then I thought you said Red Sox. Maybe we crossed wires there. That's what I thought you were saying.
No, I basically don't have the Reds.
Okay,
Tyler Stevenson at 5% is the most that I have.
Is all you have? Okay. Well, and the reason I said that is because the Reds, and this is why I thought I must have just misheard you. Red Sox. I know you like them, but the Reds also have like one of the highest top stack probabilities. And like I said, the second highest leverage score, but if the prices on the actual Reds, not the Red Sox, is also really, really high, which is going to lead to hardly any ownership there as well.
Yeah, I have a little bit of disparity on the Reds. I currently have them as my number 11 team overall. We have them a little bit higher on the site. So they're just sort of like an extra team to me right now.
You have any other low owned stacks or even higher owned stacks that you really like tonight?
Who am I most over on? I'm probably going to get to a little bit more of the Rays than most. I'll probably get to a little bit more of the Padres than most, but nothing like so much of what I'm doing now is going to be hoping that the Red Sox pop and crossing them up with the Cubs and the Braves. The Phillies are I'm taking a lot bigger stands by not playing people than I am by playing a lot other than the Red Sox. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. No, Skylar, I was not confusing the Reds and Red Sox. I was combining them together. I thought Josh was talking. I thought he had both of them that he was coming in heavy on, but I know you like the Red Sox a lot. All right. So now that we're through stacks, because you already hit on the contrarian ones, I don't think we necessarily need to get there unless you have any lower owned ones, but I would assume that we're good to go.
We are.
Yeah. Let's go position by position here and just knock out a couple of these. I think the catcher position, which is oftentimes kind of a barren wasteland, actually has a decent amount to get to today. Would I be right in saying that Vasquez is one of your highest owned catchers?
Let's find out. Favorite catcher on the day. I mean, obviously is Wilson Contreras. That shouldn't be too big of a shock. My highest owned catcher. Let me make sure I have this here. Just got to copy a table quick. Still getting all my stuff set up. It's been a hot minute since we've had to talk any baseball.
Intricate process. Yes, sir.
It is an intricate process. So tough intricate, word. In fact, that I couldn't even say intricate process. Oh man, that actually just happened right now.
Yeah, it certainly did. It's an intricate word.
It really is.
I'm asking.
Highest owned catcher is Jonah Heim of the Rangers. He's 2,500.
Okay.
He's more of a one-off catcher option. Vasquez, though, just second behind him.
I figured as much. Yeah. And then I guess another thing too is you have no real Muto. I heard Eric mention earlier that he's 2,800 on FanDuel, which would have been a very easy decision there. But now you're coming into a game where you have Andrew Knapp batting out of the 8-hole. That's not all that appealing unless you're just trying to get crazy. There are some good options though. I mean, it's just a matter of what you're willing to pay here. Wilson Contreras. Adam talked about Mike Zunino against Logan Allen, who has just been annihilated seemingly every time he touches the mound. Wilson Contreras Wilson Contreras. Sorry. And then, like you said, Vasquez, you're going all the way down though in some of these to the bottom and just punting that with those expensive Red Sox stacks would be the assumption, or expensive stacks elsewhere. Yeah.
I mean, somewhat like in terms of my ownership, Red Sox make up 3 out of the top 4 guys individually. Only Chris Bryant is pulling any additional ownership for me. I mean, the Cubs are obviously pulling a ton of ownership just by default, as they are for the rest of the public, but I'm getting a little bit more of Wisdom, a little bit more of Baez, a little bit more of Rizzo. So I don't really mind too much of that Cubs ownership as of right now. It looks like it's come down just a little bit since we started the show. Actually, I've actually had quite a bit changes. Like I'm significantly lower on Woodruff than I was 49 minutes ago, which is kind of wild to think about. But yeah, most of my catcher exposure right now, Heim, Vasquez, Contreras, and Contreras.
Now I have to know, how many of your 150 stacks are Red Sox in some form or fashion? Usually you pull that right up. I thought you were there.
I don't have it. I deleted columns like that. If I had to guess, I don't know, probably like 20 something %.
Okay. It's a decent amount.
A lot. I'm 4.5x the field on the Red Sox right now.
First base, where do we go to? Top options here.
Guy I'm playing the most is Patrick Wisdom of the Cubs. The 2 guys that are closest to him, Anthony Rizzo and Freddie Freeman. If you're looking to be a little bit different, Gavin Sheets for the White Sox at 2,600 seems fine, but I am not trying to get super weird. I'm paying for the talent today at first base.
Okay. Second base, let's move on over here. Gene Segura is surely going to be a popular option, and I think rightfully so. Look, I'm not particularly, I don't love Philly just because I think the Zach Davies matchup is a little bit overblown. And I also think, the wind is preferable, but man, I can't tell you the amount of win games that have just not come to fruition whatsoever. And then you have a slate like this with so many high totals, but Segura getting the highest ownership, guys like Whit Merrifield coming in beneath that. And then it's pretty spread out after that. Anybody you really like here?
So I have, let's see, what's the number? 1 lineup with your boy Segura. So okay. To me, he's just wildly overowned at 16%. Different play for cash, obviously, but not there for me for GPPs. A lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm fading the Phillies. So Kike Hernandez, Hae Song Kim of the Padres at 2,500 is picking up a lot of one-off options for me. Albies, another guy, only picking up 9% ownership. So Albies, Kike is on a different planet. Again, Red Sox are driving a lot of that. Kim, Albies, and Nico Herner are all pulling about 20% for me at second base.
Okay. And Kike Hernandez has that outfield eligibility as well on DraftKings. So
yeah, so he's showing up in places where like makes it seem like it's a little bit more because he could be rostered in more than one spot.
Third base, Chris Bryant, pretty obvious. You already talked about Wisdom has first and third base eligibility. Yeah, someone mentioned Sheets in chat as well. Yeah, he's discounted for sure, batting out of the 6 hole in Minnesota. Pretty hot out there right now as well, and he's played well. So that's a solid punt option to consider. Where do we go at third base here, given that obviously Chris Bryant's getting the highest ownership? Are you super underweight on him too?
No, I'm not actually, because of how well he grades out. He's one of the few guys that are pulling a lot of ownership that my Sims actually agreed with. So I'm pretty much neutral to the field on Chris Bryant. And again, I'm still getting to a decent amount of Cubs. So Bryant and Wisdom are my two highest priority third basemen. If we're talking about guys you're trying to get over the field on, Devers for the Red Sox, obviously. That Kim dude, again, for the Padres, who I don't clearly know at all. And then a little bit of Austin Riley, 4,200, hitting fourth for the Braves. I think he's going a little under-owned at 8%.
All right, let's talk shortstop, round it out at outfield, then we can start taking some questions here. Josh, shortstop position, where are we going?
Xander Bogaerts is obviously my number one shortstop. That should be no surprise whatsoever. Baez is the chalk play today. I actually think he's the second best option. To me, he's the overall best option. Bogaerts is just pulling more ownership because of the Sox. If you want to go to Dansby Swanson, 3,900, only getting 7% ownership, which I think is relatively appropriate. But if you're getting to Brave stacks, I think he's pretty massively under-owned. So most of my exposure is going to Bogaerts at the shortstop spot. But Baez, Swanson, Orlando Arcia also works pretty well for me. Tatis, clearly not a problem to roster, but I'm going other directions.
Projections for baseball are free today. I think I forgot to mention that, but they are totally free over at awesemo.com. We'll rotate through premium content. If basketball's happening, we'll give you something there as well. But tonight's that's not the case. So yeah, if you want to check that out, 100% free MLB projections. You still have a few minutes, about 11 minutes before lock, to check all of that out if you haven't done so yet. And one more thing I wanted to mention, because I've been churning out videos left and right. So is Matt Kajeski, and I think they're pretty damn good. We got a fantasy football channel, and I think we're posting some of them here as well still. There's huge best ball drafts happening right now, like huge. And it's only going to get bigger. It's only going to get more intense. Put yourself in a position now, especially if you love fantasy football, even DFS, any kind of football. Check these videos out. We're doing a ton of things, player profiles, boom, bust, breakouts, you name it, mock drafts, everything over at the new channel, Awesemo Fantasy Football. Every single day we're putting new videos out there. I think you guys will legitimately enjoy them, and they're short too. You know, you get through these in like 5 or 6 minutes. We'll have some longer form stuff, some live streams, some podcasts, but for now, you know, you can go in and on your work break, or Josh, it's a dumper video, you know?
Gotta love those dumpers, man.
Yeah. Go in, the fire one off, catch that video, come out a whole new man. A little bit later, as a matter of fact. But yeah, check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. A lot of good stuff on there. Outfield position. Wrap us up for this one. We'll take some questions.
Yeah. So Chris Bryant, also, as we've mentioned before, he's my highest exposed outfielder. Kike. JD Martinez is at 4.5% ownership. I'm going to spend the $6K if he's not going to pick up any ownership. If we're looking for guys that, like, we haven't really been talking about, guys outside of that Red Sox group, Manny Margot is my 5th most exposed outfielder right now. We're talking about a guy that's 8% owned that I'm getting to in the 20s. More Red Sox. Ryan O'Hearn, willing to try to buy a home run there. Luis Arias, Trevor Larnish, not too much else. Like, so much of it is just the Boston Red Sox, but those are most of the guys that are at the top of my exposure list as of right now.
Okay, we got a question in our premium Slack chat. Always want to get to you guys and make things a little bit easier for you, since you are premium subs and we love you. Okay, thoughts on where is it? Oh yeah, thoughts on Ohtani, Josh. Is there? I obviously the question isn't like, hey, do you think Ohtani's good, but more so on a slate with just an insane amount of good hitters and good stacks. As a matter of fact, like, how does Ohtani fit in for you, if at all?
I can't even remember seeing his name so far. So there's that. Let me take a look.
Well, it's tough, right? Because if you're stacking Boston, it's right. Like JD Martinez in a 5-man stack or Shohei Ohtani. If you're stacking a lot of these teams, they're pricey. getting Ohtani in there is taking away two of the top bats, unless you're going just like full out value with both pitchers, than it would if you didn't have him in a lineup. So I would just think it would be pretty tough there.
I have 4% Ohtani at 6,200. He was projected in my sims to be in the optimal lineup about 7% of the time. We've got him owned at 6%. So he's never going to show up if the rest of the team can't show up. And I have the Angels as the 12th best team to stack. So it's just really hard to get to Ohtani.
Okay. We got a few minutes here. Take some questions. Still time to close out these lineups. Lock is at 7:05 Eastern time. Only one game locking at 7:05. That's Atlanta and Pittsburgh. And we didn't really even touch much on that at all with Max Fried and Chase DeYoung. Are you essentially like off that game entirely? I did want to hit on that.
For the most part, yeah. I have like a neutral. I like the Braves as a stack. That's a very different story. But Max Fried, I'm basically neutral to. To me, it's just not that kind of spot.
Okay. See if we got any questions in here that we can tackle, Josh. And let's see what we've got. Okay, let's go to Slack chat, and I'll take them in premium YouTube's, not premium, in YouTube as well. If you're a member, if you're part of Team Awesemo with the badge, I definitely see that first, but I'll hit anybody. And we get that to 300 likes. That would be fantastic. We're only 226, Josh. I know it's not the same crowd as NBA, but
no,
I think that could be a little bit better. Maybe we need the Engleman charm.
I think we probably do, guys. You and I are making our MLB debuts today. We're gonna work through this a little bit, but hit that thumbs up. It helps us out tremendously when that number climbs. I mean, I'd like to see it get to 300, but I feel like I'm almost begging a little bit too much. We're bringing the goods tomorrow, but hit that thumbs up. Let's get to 300. That feels like a pretty good number for this show.
There's no doubt it might take a couple days for us to get our sea legs again when it comes to baseball. Talking basketball for the past 7 months now.
Yeah.
But it'll be there. It'll be there sooner than later. No doubt about it. Rizzo or Freeman at first base, Josh? I'll assume that is a GPP question.
Rizzo or Freeman. I have them very comparable. I have Freddie Freeman showing up in the optimal slightly more frequently than Rizzo. So Freeman.
Thoughts on Margot on FanDuel from our boy El Negro Loco, a.k.a. News God.
I assume I like him.
2,700
in the leadoff spot. Yeah, I mean, I like him a lot.
Yeah, I don't know how you wouldn't, right? I mean, it's just
he looks great.
Spot. What's that?
He looks great.
Yeah, pretty easy spot. Thanks, Nate. Appreciate you, man. We've been doing this long. We've done a lot of shows together, so you kind of just catch your stride. But it will get better. It will only get better. That's a good thing. Okay, anything else here? What do we have? Just people fighting. That's good.
Fun.
Yeah, always, right?
Yeah.
Okay. RX Bear has a question, Josh. I'll see if you can pull it up. You got an optimal lineup?
I guess I can.
I would assume you could, right? But obviously,
I don't really run it like that because it's baseball,
I know. But people don't like the stack sometimes in cash games. Always curious to see like what it would come up. You just get it. I don't know if you even would get a lot of one-offs. Would you just naturally go into a Chicago stack?
I would imagine.
Right?
Let me go ahead and figure out what my optimal is. Delete stack. Yes.
Yeah, because we still got a couple minutes.
Optimal is Woodruff, Musgrove, Jonah Heim, Ryan O'Hearn, Segura, Chris Bryant, Baez, Acuna, Margot, Jake Marisnick.
Okay, what was that? 3 Cubs or 4?
Three Cubs. It's a cash lineup.
Yeah, for sure. Makes sense to me. All right. Thoughts on Franmil Reyes or Harold Ramirez? So Franmil Reyes, Cleveland against Hill, 3,200 batting in the cleanup spot.
No interest.
What's that?
No interest.
Yeah, Harold Ramirez, same team, batting 6th, though, $2,400 at outfield. So it's not really apples to apples there, but.
No, I don't really have either one of them.
Okay, fair enough. Almost there. We got a few minutes to go. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to hit us with anything else you have. There's still time to make those adjustments. Not to mention, if you don't have anybody from that Atlanta-Pittsburgh game, you'll still have a little bit of additional time there as well. And then Philly, Chicago, not till 8:05. Josh's primary stack not till 9:38 first pitch. So it's an interesting one. 9:38. And then Washington, San Diego with Musgrove all the way at 10:10. So just to back up for 1 second here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question from Fernando, actually. I'll get to this. What's an expensive Cubs bat to fade? If your answer couldn't be all of them, not that you're fading all of them, but in the sense that like all of them make sense, what would be the highest priced bat, or really the most popular bat from the Cubs that you have the least of?
Probably Rizzo. I think it's just easier to find a different first baseman if you need to.
Yeah, Chris, but it's funny too, because Chris Bryant is one that you said just profiles really well regardless.
Right.
And you're going to get a lot of him. Wilson Contreras is up there. And all of these guys, the 6 of them have double-digit ownership tonight. Even Jock Peterson, lefty-lefty matchup, which he hasn't fared particularly well with. He's at 8.6%. I mean, seriously, all of these guys are just going to end up being wildly popular. And the wind will always do that, man. People are drawn to those win games. The totals soar through the roof. They've gone from 5.9 to 6.4. I don't see any way that this doesn't come in as the clear highest owned stack. And I mean by a pretty wide margin.
I'm with you. It has to. They look too good.
DFS Crusher Laffy, is minor a fade? I guess it depends on what you mean by a fade. If you ended up with a few minor lineups, given the dearth of options at the pitcher position, I don't think you'd be doing yourself a terrible disservice, but he is getting 14%. Rich Hill's around 15. Minor's, hey, look, Minor's the same price essentially on DraftKings as our boy TM, as our boy Tyler Megill, and he's getting a little more than half of that ownership. So is there anything to you that says, you know what, maybe I will get a little bit of Mike Minor, just given that he's basically half the ownership of Megill?
I mean, I have 12% minor.
Okay, so you're right around the field then.
Yeah. I don't have much of an issue there. To me, it's just super uneventful.
Yeah, I would say so as well. You got, like you said, 0 C's, Joe Musgrove. Let's recap this before we head out, because people will, generally speaking, have a few more minutes to make adjustments if that first game isn't really on their radar.
Yeah.
Mostly Musgrove, Megill, and then Woodruff. Where is your exposure to him right now? That's probably an important question, just given how popular he's going to be. 15%?
Yeah.
All right. 15%. Any thoughts, man, before we head out? First MLB show of the season. Going to continue
good
doing
to be
this.
back.
Yeah, basketball is going to be over soon.
Yeah, I just I'm not comfortable yet maneuvering through baseball. I'm so used to the basketball mentality. So like when I see someone like Joe Musgrove at the top, I get really surprised to see my exposures. But we'll dial it in. Go Red Sox, go Cubbies, go Braves today. If that goes well, if the Red Sox go well, life should be pretty good for me. That's where we'll end up. That's what I'm hoping for most.
Beautiful. That'll do it for us. Thanks as always for tuning in. Remember, check out our sponsor, Jock Market. You can play whenever you want. There's no lock or anything like that. Throughout the night, your lineups get smoked. Head over to Jock Market. Make some money there. Yeah. We'll see you back here for the next one. Josh and I on NBA tomorrow, morning and night. Should be fun. And then we'll be back for more baseball. Thanks for tuning in as always. Cue that music, Jordan Klein, who's producing this show and doing a great job as always. Peace.